Call the February 24th, 2026 Planning Board to order. So we get started. First thing is like to recognize guests. Commissioner Cornett, thank you for coming. Next order of business would be the approval of the minutes from the previous January 27th.
I'll make the motion to approve the January 27th, 2026 regular meeting minutes.
Okay, we have a motion. Thank you.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Okay. Next, public comments. Let's see. First of all, we have, is it Jeff Locke? You have 3 minutes. If you could state your name, please, at the podium. Yes, correct.
Hi, my name is Jeff Locke. I am on the Huntersville Greenway Trail and Bikeway Committee. I'm here tonight speaking as a private individual and citizen of Huntersville. I wanted to talk about the planned rezoning at the 73 and 115 community that we're going to be talking about tonight. There is a unique opportunity at this location for transit-oriented development. It is right along the proposed red line, and there will be a red line station, I believe, in the neighboring community in Cornelius. One of the goals of transit-oriented development is to reduce car dependency through providing viable alternatives to driving. We have some of that covered with the red line. Ideally, if people living in this community are going to work in Charlotte, they can commute back and forth that way. But it's also a unique opportunity for active transit. It is right along our proposed seam alignment. The seam, or formerly the Charlotte to Mooresville Trail, is a big regional connector. Charlotte has most of their system, like 85, 90% done. Huntersville's kind of holding it back. We are the important connection for the rest of North Mecklenburg County, and this new development is right along the proposed alignment. There is a plan, I believe, proposed by David Peet for making the Greenway a little more centrally important in this community. I wanted to personally support that. Having a Greenway that is pleasant and inviting, that people want to be on, is really important for getting people out there on these things, using them as transportation, using them for recreation. Greenways are the #1 requested amenity in the town of Huntersville. This is a major thing that would increase property values here, but also really just perform like local connectivity functions. It's about 2 miles from this community to downtown Huntersville, about, I believe, 3 miles to downtown Cornelius, 4 miles to downtown Davidson. Once this trail is there, this will be hopefully the primary way that people are going to get to and from these places without having to get in a car and add to the traffic here. So I just wanted to emphasize the importance of having this connection, having it be a place that people want to be, and making it a central, desirable feature that people will want to move to this development to be near. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bob McCauley. You will have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
I'm speaking in regards to the,
And I'm sorry, could you state your name
yeah,
just for
Bob
the record?
McCauley.
Thank you.
I'm speaking in regard to the Old Statesville Road mixed-use project. I live at 109 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road. I own 107 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, which is where I grew up, and also own 105 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, in addition to a lot behind that. So I've lived on that property my entire life. Dearness Gardens and the 11 acres that are part of this rezoning were actually my grandparents' farm when I was growing up. I'm the property owner probably most impacted by this rezoning, since I live on and own 5 acres directly on the northern boundary of this property. I went to the community meeting and also spoke at the public hearing. Although I know there are already a lot of apartments coming online in Huntersville, I understand the plan for higher density along 115 in the 2040 plan. It is disappointing that so much of the new development is rental property instead of home ownership. With that being said, I understand the three and 4-story apartment buildings, which are buildings A, B, and C along Highway 115. If you feel the need to do the rezoning, I ask that the 4th apartment building, which is Building D, be changed to 2-story townhouses instead of the 3-story apartment building. At the back end of the property where it's transitioning back into the neighborhood, it would fit better with the existing neighbors if it could be changed to a 2-story townhouses. Otherwise, me and my neighbors are going to be looking at a 3-story apartment building staring right into our backyards. What I'm proposing is exactly what was done at Discovery Place Kids, where you built apartments along Gilead Road, but then as you transition back into the neighborhood, you change that to 2-story townhouses. And I would like to see the project done the same way. The planning staff is also recommending that these be changed to 2-story townhouses. The change might also help provide the client with more open space for residents and help with the specimen tree save, which they're having struggle meeting. The applicant is asking for a lot of exceptions to the rezoning. It is advertised as a mixed use as currently submitted, but the plan is basically a commercial, an apartment complex with very little commercial space. Also has the traffic impact analysis being approved by the town's engineering staff and the North Carolina DOT. I'm very surprised that there's not a right turn lane going into this project. Thank you for consideration of my thoughts and concerns.
Thank you. And last, we have Beth Pell. And if you could state your name, please, for the record.
Hi, my name is Beth Pell. I'm Bob's neighbor. I live at 13500 Mount Holly Huntersville Road on 5 acres that will be behind this mixed-use project that wants to be rezoned. We moved to this property 35 years ago, and we have done our best to steward it well. We have a 1-acre lake that we share with our neighbor. Through the decades of living there, we participated and worked to create and maintain our lake's good water quality as it's part of the protected Mountain Island watershed, which provides our drinking water. The High Street District Development is also part of the protected Mountain Island watershed, and this water from this property will flow into our lake and then into Torrance Creek and onto McDowell Creek and into the Mountain Island Lake. From studying this LID, or Low Impact Development Ordinance online PowerPoint, I learned that 1 inch of rainfall on an acre of woods produces no runoff, and the same 1 inch of rainfall on 1 acre of asphalt will produce 27,000 gallons of runoff. This might explain why, since the roundabout was completed, we've had our lake's dam keep overtopping when we just get 1.5 inches of rain. So it's impacting our lake already. My hope is that as a town, we interpret the stringent measures as laid out in the Huntersville Water Quality Design Manual to the highest standards possible. And that we also ask the question, is this the ideal property for this type of development? Might a development of this density be better suited for a site that isn't part of a watershed that's protected? As far as I can tell, this west side of Old Statesville Road up to Gilead is the only part of this high-density 2040 downtown development plan that's in the protected watershed. My request is that you call on the experts and get good advisors and set the bar high for the sake of the watershed. And if anybody wants to walk back there, I'd be glad to lead a tour. Just let me know. Thank you for serving our town, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, moving on in the agenda. Item 4A, consider recommendation on petition R2515 to rezone 11.17 acres located at 13501 Old Statesville Road for a mixed-use development. Mr. James.
All right. Good evening. Do I need to turn this on? I'll just watch it up there. So, good evening. I'd like to present the rezoning case for R2515, Old Statesville Road Mixed Use. And before I do so, I'd like to enter my staff report into the record. So, R2515, what we have here, right south of the roundabout is the Dearness Gardens property. That's currently zoned Highway Commercial Conditional District. And then the 3 parcels south of that are zoned neighborhood residential. The petition request is to go neighborhood center conditional district for a mixed-use development. And on the screen, you see the context map just south of the roundabout is the Dearness Gardens property with the proposed site plan within that boundary. There's a congregate housing living apartment to the south of that, and then some larger lot, single-family homes kind of surrounding it. And on the screen, you see the site plan. Basically, it's a mixed-use development, apartments, townhomes to the rear, and then on the front of the 2 buildings facing Highway 115, there are some commercial space. Currently, there's proposed 5,000 square feet on Building A, which is the northern building on Highway 115, and 3,000 square feet on Building B below. The applicants have proposed a grid light network for this mixed-use development. They've also proposed 10 attainable housing units, and there are 4 modification requests. So going to those modification requests and the site plan review, in this district, the town only allows 70% or 30% attached housing. This plan is requesting 100% attached housing. You see on the site plan, there's actually 4 apartment buildings and then 2 townhome buildings. Staff is recommending a higher percentage of townhomes to get a better mix of housing. And that would be in that back northern western quadrant. We would be asking for more townhomes. There'd be less surface parking area in that area, and it would give just a better mix overall of housing. The ordinance also requires 60% of the commercial ground floor on mixed-use buildings. This application offers 17 and 21% for those 2 buildings that front Highway 115. Staff is looking for a higher percentage of overall commercial space in those for a more usable type retail space. We, as staff, believe that area could accommodate a higher percentage of retail commercial space, closer to the required 60%. There is a modification of the 30% tree save requirement. This plan offers approximately 8%. Staff is in favor of this modification request due to the development they are doing and the request for more public streets and more connections to the west of the property. Most of the tree save is in that northern part adjacent to the northern property lines, and that's where the actual public street would go. So we are in favor of mitigation, and that could be with tree bank fund or adding trees on site. There is also a request to encroach and build upon some of the intermittent stream. As you see on the site plan, that is the lighter pink area and red hatched areas, not the blue hatched areas. That's perennial. There is a need to cross some of that intermittent stream area and develop part of that. In the public hearing, the applicants had proposed built upon area in the perennial area, and through staff's request, the applicants have pulled out the development out of that back area. Again, that's the perennial area in that hatched blue. They've pulled all of their development, encroached development out of that area. So that is no longer a modification request. And then one other update, since the public hearing, staff had requested that all development come out of the adjacent buffer areas, the 30-foot required vegetated buffer. And from the plans, you will see that they have moved all development out of those 30-foot buffer areas. That's the green area in the west and the south of the site plan. On the screen, you see the architecture that they are proposing. This is the mixed-use building and the apartment building. The mixed-use buildings are along the front of the development, and the apartment buildings are interior of the request. And then you've got the townhomes and the clubhouse there on this screen. The architecture does meet staff's expectations and the ordinance expectations for the ordinance. This plan does support many items in the 2040 plan. Staff just feels that the few items that are missing outweigh the ones that it does, and those would be the items of more commercial space for the mixed-use area and a higher mix of housing. Since the public hearing, we did give them credit for some of the environmental areas that they've been pulled out of. The 2040 plan does talk about staying out of watershed stream buffers and perennial buffers, and the applicants did do that. Moving on to staff's recommendation. Because of those two items, the lack of close to 60% commercial space on mixed-use buildings, and being just overall too high of a percentage of apartment units and not enough mixed housing and townhome housing, staff at this time does not recommend approval. We could be in favor of the project if they did offer those two items. So at this time, we are not recommending approval. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those. High Street Development is here as well. They have a presentation. So whichever way you guys want to go with that.
Excuse me, do you want to start with questions for staff before the petitioner presents? Go ahead.
So for the things that staff's having problems with, the percent of detached and the commercial space, if Building D were to be flipped to townhomes, then would that fix the first floor commercial space requirement of 60% or get it somewhere more in the range that staff could be comfortable with?
So those are two separate items. The apartment building D is the one in the west, northwest section of the development. And that right now, because it doesn't scale back into two-story.
It's only 2 stories, so it doesn't require commercial. Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, that one doesn't require, the requirement for commercial is those two front buildings, because that's a shop front style building.
All right, let me try it another way then. So
Okay.
if that was to flip to townhomes, would it then meet the detached requirement? Oops. Oh. If Building D went away and it was filled with townhomes, whatever the number is appropriate for that space, would it then help qualify it for the percent detached required in a mixed-use setting?
So the requirement for a mix of housing, it still doesn't meet so the ordinance allows 30% detached and 70% attached. It would still be 100% attached, but what staff is looking for is a more of a mix of housing instead of just having apartments in an apartment-style house. Then you've got more of a two-story less dense townhome in that back. So it's still 100%.
Okay, yes,
attached.
I forgot. Yeah,
Yeah.
townhomes are attached,
Yep.
okay, okay. But you'd be more likely to accept it if it were townhomes rather than more apartments.
Yep,
Gotcha.
staff feels it better meets the 2040 plan for, and that mixed-use node to give that more mix of housing styles.
And let's see, I guess the height of buildings A and B are 4 stories, right?
Correct.
Okay, okay. And can you tell us how the conversations have gone with getting more commercial space in there? What the objections are and that kind of thing?
I'll let the applicants speak to that.
Okay.
They've got their market studies and those items. I don't want to kind of step on their toes there, but they've been accommodating as far as where we were at the start and where we are now. And I think to begin with, there were live-work units, and they are offering now just flat-out commercial square footage. But staff would like more assurance that, those commercial spaces are a little deeper and could accommodate things like restaurants or cafes or coffee shops, and not just say, for instance, like an architecture office or some type of other commercial use.
Okay, thanks. I'll hold that for them then. Thank you.
Here, I'll go.
Go ahead, Chris.
So I see the buffer to the west and the south. Why isn't there a buffer to the north where you actually have residents that are concerned about the neighboring property?
Sure, that's a good question. So the adjacent property to the north, there's actually that right-of-way, and that right-of-way encompasses,
So the town owns that right away?
it would be owned by the town. It'd be a local street. So it's a right-of-way. You'd have your street trees in there. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it's probably a 60-foot right-of-way. Local street, give or take, 60-foot right-of-way. So it's actually a wider area. You probably don't have quite as much vegetation, but you do have street trees on both sides of that street. So it wouldn't require a buffer unless it was actual development right on that property line.
Is there a way to design and develop that a little bit differently so it's like more of an opaque, instead of it being like a street like you guys want it to be with houses on both sides, since it's somebody's backyard, could you do, move the sidewalk closer and put a row of trees there or something like that so it's more of a opaque kind of cutoff to those people's backyards?
That's something that you could do with a condition.
Yeah.
The town, when lots are redeveloped, we kind of look for them to meet the current ordinance standards. And one of the reasons we also want a lower density of housing in the rear is so you don't have that 4-story building.
Right, yeah.
We feel like when you've got street trees on either side, and once they get, to mature growth, it could buffer a two-story building. And it would mimic more of what you've got out there currently, 2-story instead of 4. But you can design it to, add other vegetation. It wouldn't meet our street tree type of standard. It might, over time, present kind of a different look. Full evergreen on one side isn't a typical
Right.
look for a
Right.
local street.
And then the other question I had was on like tenant lease up on other neighboring properties. Everybody's saying more commercial, more commercial. Are we seeing in the other developments within, a reasonable radius of here that they are able to lease 50+% of like a downstairs area or whatever?
I don't have those leasing numbers. I think currently, and trends change all the time.
Yeah.
I think currently it's taking a little longer to lease commercial, but our goal is always to look into the future, and those trends will change again. And what we don't want to have is a whole area of town that doesn't have like these nodes of actual commercial space.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
we feel like this is a perfect space for like a neighborhood restaurant or coffee shop, something of that nature to fill that area. And staff just doesn't believe that 3,000 and 5,000 square feet for those would accommodate that type of space.
Right, and I think you said they were at 21% in one building, 17 in another.
Correct.
And was there a recommendation from the town on what percentage you were looking for?
We didn't have an exact number. The requirement's 60.
Yep,
I think that we would be okay with 50, or somewhere along those lines.
okay.
But, 17 and 20 to 60 is a big difference. If
That
we
is
get
big.
a little closer, then we'd be a little more accommodating for recommendations.
Yep. That's all I have.
Yeah, just to follow on to what Chris asked. So when the staff is looking at a downward deviation from that 60% requirement, what sort of factors go into supporting that downward deviation?
That's a good question. We typically look at the ordinance in the 2040 plan. We don't currently have leasing rates, but the 2040 plan wasn't put together that long ago. And like I said, I know the trends for commercial are going down from what we hear. We're always looking for future build outs of what the 2040 plan's asking and the ordinance as well. So we just looked at the big difference between the 60 and the 20 and kind of did it that way.
Thanks.
Any other staff questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
I have one more question. So watershed, looks like a lot of water that's going to be going into a neighbor's, what does she consider it, a lake? What are we doing to mitigate that? Is there anything in here that's being planted to help absorb that water, or can you
Okay,
discuss that?
So in the town's ordinances and the county ordinance, they have to treat and retain their own water. So that impervious percentage, let's say they went up to as high as 70%, I think that's allowed in that area for impervious surface. They have to be able to retain that much water on site before it filters into the streams. So the rate, and I'm not an engineer, so we have town engineers that will review this to our ordinance standards, but all of that impervious surface will need to be retained on site. And then we also have water quality requirements, so it will need to be treated on site as well before it goes into those watershed areas. So they do have what's called SCM, an SCM pond, and they also have underground detention proposed on this plan. You see the SCM, that's a dry sand filter on that lower area of the, thank you, of the plan. That's their SCM, and they have some underground retention up at the parking lot. Thank you.
I'm going to I'm going to follow up on a question there. I don't know if there's a condition, but there was a concern about the downstream pond. As far as protection measures, it's probably more important, I guess, early on, but I know and I don't know if this comes during plan review with the engineering documents, but I have seen where they've had to go out and actually measure, depths to see if there's any damage or any, additional sediment that may pollute the pond, so to speak. And I don't know if that's been discussed, but I was just bringing it up because that was asked in the public.
I personally have not seen that on any of my reviews. Are you asking if we'll do a study on the neighboring?
No, it's probably a
parcel?
good thing. It's probably good protection for the petitioner to do it, but we have seen where we've had to where it's been monitored prior to construction to check the depths. And, then it's monitored during construction to see if
There's any
excessive
changes?
silt.
Okay. I mean, that's certainly a request that, could be added as a condition. Brian, have we had any of these type conditions in your time here? Monitoring?
It happens especially near the lake.
County does some monitoring wells and those things around. Like Jesse said, and of course you know, this system is to be designed as it's treated naturally as if the site's not developed. So it will act the same as it does today. Different circumstance with the roadway systems, that gets developed a whole different way than what's being developed on these sites.
Yeah, that's fine. And that was really more just from the initial grading rather than because the permanent solution, you know,
Right.
with the.
Again,
with
at the rezoning level, the concepts, we're checking
Yeah.
to make sure these ideas are going to work. If it gets approved, then you go to the actual full design. That's where all the real,
Sure.
as you know, that's where the real engineering comes into play.
Yeah, they'll look at the stormwater calculations and make sure that the added impervious doesn't change the water course of adjacent parcels.
Correct.
That's a requirement that we do for anything in the watershed, so.
Anywhere in town.
True, yeah, stormwater anywhere in town.
Thank you. Is there any other, Michael, go ahead.
Well, I think Chris brought this up earlier, and that was with regards to the commercial space. It doesn't appear, and maybe I missed it, that doesn't appear to be a methodology that we actually use as a town that actually determines whether or not is 50, 70. We kind of use judgment to some extent. And in light of not having a methodology, is there any information that can affirm that the way in which we're approaching it is successful or not? Because worst thing we need to do is require, something that ultimately we've perhaps later determined that doesn't work at all. So, it would be helpful to the board if we had some way of assessing whether or not that model could be tightly tuned in so that we know when we make the decision, it's not just arbitrary.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The one difficulty we've had is when we've done some commercial kind of market study is that those markets fluctuate so quickly. I mean, just 2-3 years ago, we were getting commercial spaces leased pretty quickly, and those fluctuations change pretty rapidly. So it's a good comment and good idea to understand those numbers a little better, but what we have to count on currently is the 60% requirement and the need for commercial in that area.
Just from some of my experiences in seeing other cities to do the same thing, depending on the type of development that it is and where it's located, has a huge impact on whether or not it will be successful. So it's not just looking at the numbers of how commercial real estate is faring. There's a question is how is it faring in a given type of environment for the development? Because those developments that are what I would kind of call on an island, which doesn't have access to, to the foot traffic or the traffic that is passing through via vehicle, at a huge disadvantage. And I would suggest probably what we're looking at here is one that it's going to be hard to get people to go ride up in there, so to speak, without some draw. And the draw is, got to have enough synergy or enough commercial development in there that they got a reason. It's more than one. Laundry cleaner's always great, right? But who wants a cleaner next door to them, right?
Sure.
So again, my comment back is that we need to fine tune it so that we aren't just simply, using an arbitrary methodology to decide whether it's going to fit or not. That's my only point.
Okay.
Lee?
One more back to the road to the north. So that's on a current right-of-way, I guess. And it looks like it just stubs out into another lot in, off of Mount Holly, Huntersville. Does that right-of-way continue, or is that it?
Well, this would be a proposed right-of-way.
Oh, it doesn't exist
It
today?
doesn't exist. This would be all new infrastructure, and there is a plan for streets to the west, but those are just plans in case things do redevelop. And what this road that stubs to that western boundary would do, it would set it up so that we could connect in the future. What we didn't want to have was a road stub that didn't go that direction, and then if those western properties did develop in coming years, we wouldn't be able to connect. So this sets it up for a grid-type network in the future.
I see. I see. I could see, especially Ms. Pell, I could see some concern she might have off of that, but I was just wondering why it just stubs there and doesn't turn directly into the property. But you answered my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff before we move on? Marshall?
Just a real quick one. So the affordable housing requirement, I think it's for 15 years, is that correct?
They are proposing for 15 years at 80 and 100% AMI.
Okay, so that 15-year requirement, is that something that's negotiated? Is that something that, because I think I've seen it different numbers on different projects.
Right, and we don't have a requirement. This is kind of where we go above and beyond in a rezoning. So they're asking for a modification for this. What are they giving to go above and beyond? And that's one of theirs is the 10 attainable housing units. And we as staff have been pushing that a lot lately. We're finding that the 15-year mark is what we're able to get right now, but it's certainly something that, could be asked for a higher amount of years or in perpetuity for the life of the development.
Sure.
We're not seeing those yet. It's generally a 15-year mark.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Speaking of the housing units, so I'm seeing on here, we're looking at up to a total of 248 total residential units. Is that including the Building D being apartments currently in that count?
Yes.
Do
Yep.
we know what that would change to if Building D were to move to townhomes instead?
The developers, the applicants have kind of crunched those numbers, and I'm sure they have that for you.
Okay,
And
perfect.
they'll have a presentation next. And that's, the reason I say I'm sure they do is we've asked for that step down in density. And I think through our conversations, they've looked into the viability of that, so.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let's move on to the petitioner.
Sure. There we go. You're welcome.
Thanks, Jesse. Good evening. My name is Bridget Grant. I'm a land use consultant with Moore and Van Allen, and I'm pleased to be here tonight on behalf of High Street Residential District. Sorry, I just lost my presentation. Perfect. I think something that will sort of help us to walk through. We've been working on this development for a little bit of time, and you can see we've gone through multiple iterations. Our first plan, Mr. Boyd, did not actually include a street to the north. That was something that staff asked for that right-of-way in order to facilitate redevelopment of the parcels around us, which sort of speaks to the overall vision of this being a higher density area and meeting the future land use goals. So in our first plan, we didn't have any affordable units. We were looking at up to 270 multifamily units with no townhomes. We did have some impacts to stream buffers. We didn't have that parallel road to the north side of our site. We were looking at our urban open spaces, and we had 15% of our tree save. After meeting with staff and moving through things, you can see in our middle plan, we changed to 8 affordable units and 6,000 square feet of commercial, and I'll speak to why we've been at a little bit of a standstill on those numbers. We adjusted to 259 multifamily units. We still had some impacts to the stream, but I think the major pivot that we took was on our February 11th submittal. You can see that we've got the road to the northern side of the site. We have 10 affordable units, 8,000 square feet of commercial uses, 238 multifamily units with 10 townhomes. We've got those connections, enhanced open space, and our site includes 28% of the tree canopy saved. One of the reasons where there's been some pushback on the amount of commercial that we're looking at is we've had a lot of conversations about how important it is for us to not compete with what's happening downtown and compete against the retail spaces. If we were to go up to 50%, it would be adding an additional like 22,000 square feet of commercial, which is essentially like adding a grocery store to this site, a small, like a Sprouts or a smaller grocery store. It would also take up an additional 30 plus parking spaces. So it really starts to change the character of the development overall and leans more towards a commercial development. What we wanted to do was have that right mix of residential units with retail at the ground floor level that had enough rooftops to support it and wouldn't necessarily compete with some of the other spaces and the vacancies that we know exist at this time. So we thought we sort of hit that magic sweet spot of being able to have that diversity and maintaining the type of density that you would anticipate seeing in your growth corridor. We really worked with staff and appreciate, we think with that 28% tree save, we've gotten to a really good place of pulling all of anything that's outside of the buffers and the sensitive areas that we could, and getting to that mix of units versus commercial space. We did also take Building D and reduce the length of it by 45 feet. That's one of the things that we were able to do to try to minimize the height of the experience of the three-story building in that particular location. I think it's worth noting when you're looking at some of the projects and you're talking about proximity to single-family residential, as Jesse mentioned, we've set up that street on the northern part of our site that contemplates redevelopment along that portion. And our building is 345 feet away from the closest single-family home. So for people who think in terms of football, that's 115 yards. That's the way I was able to sort of get a visual on what that looks and feels like. So we've got our public right-of-way, in addition to streets, trees on both sides. And then there is some existing mature tree canopy on the adjacent neighbor's property that would not be impacted by our extension through this area. We have our traffic engineer here who's happy to answer any questions about the traffic study. We've included some additional open space amenities and appreciate that we've been able to address all but two of staff's last two outstanding issues, and still think that despite not hitting those two issues, we're still fairly well aligned with the goals of the comp plan in terms of providing a mix of uses, a density that's appropriate for this area, ground floor active uses to really engage people on the street level. We think that 8,000 square feet is enough to provide opportunities for other retail type spaces, not just offices, but we can't necessarily overcommit. But with those spaces, there are definitely small restaurants and other uses that are in that 3,000 to 5,000 square foot range. Jesse already described and did a great job showing you some of the imagery that we created. This just demonstrates that we did our best to, as working through this process, address every comment that we came to with staff to the best of our ability. And at the end of the day, we're proud to say that we have a project that includes affordable housing that's consistent with the level of affordable housing that's been approved at the past few projects. We've got some infrastructure wins, job creation with construction, and then the opportunity for small business growth in this area. We've got proximity to public transportation, alignment with the land use plan. We believe we're bringing forward a high-quality mixed-use development that's got some thoughtful, varied residential footprints as well as the ground floor uses. And we really view that commercial space as a great opportunity to create incubator space and small business opportunities. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for the petitioner? Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you for that presentation. So my question is, with the 8,000 square feet of commercial space, was an actual feasibility study performed, or is that the number that you've settled on?
So I can ask Tom Burr with the development team to come and speak to this as well. Generally, when they're looking at it, they look at what vacancies that are in the area, they look at market feasibility, and they look at what lenders are willing to finance in terms of supporting construction of the building. So they hit a tipping point on what they would essentially be able to provide. He left his notes.
Thank you. If you could state your name as well for the record.
Yeah, I'm Tom Burr with the petitioner. I don't know, you want to finish your point?
No, I was going to.
Yeah, so what I would say is we try to look at the development holistically in terms of what this specific area could take on and what we could affect from a commercial feasibility study perspective. And a lot of that was informed by market participant feedback. So we're talking to retail and commercial brokers regularly about the amount of space. I think the feedback that we heard kind of consistently similar to some of the comments and questions during the staff comment period. Not necessarily having a large anchor tenant. This isn't a grocery anchored center type of retail critical mass. We've landed on this amount of space that we feel like is leasable. And our goal here is to try to have an expedited path to meaningful tenancy in those spaces. So we're planning to deliver them in a warm vanilla shell type of condition versus a cold dark shell for easier move-in, much more expedited conversations across a really wide range of small businesses. And we feel like that approach, to Bridget's point, achieves the objectives of this mixed-use node that's really kind of on the fringe of downtown and less so to be competitive with those spaces that are currently vacant in downtown or maybe coming online in more core downtown in the future. Thank you. Sure.
Other questions?
Have you all thought about a way to not develop the furthest west piece of that corridor road temporarily, just to provide some temporary buffer between the residents that, you know, are there now? I know there's a long-term plan for that to be street frontage and probably more apartments built there, but is there some kind of plan?
Yeah, so I think our plan overall with the development, right, we're talking about overall disturbed area of less than 10 acres. We're planning to construct it at once, right, in a single phase. It would probably be pretty tough to remobilize when we start building that roadway connection, right? We're going to want to finish it to all the way to the stub on that side. I understand the question.
Yeah.
I just,
I'm thinking my mind almost goes back to the town. The town wants that grid system in, and it's not time for it yet. And this might be a town question. Is there a way for them to deed that right away and us develop it later?
The difficulty there is when the developer goes in and builds it, and they've got the permits for the buildings, then there's certificate of occupancies that are given out. We can't hold them to building that infrastructure later.
And I wouldn't want to. I would want to hold the town to building that, 700 feet or whatever that is right there.
Okay.
Once that we're ready for that grid system, because I would say that we're not.
And that would be a capital improvement project.
Correct.
No, all buildings must front public streets or open spaces. This would be the public street they have to face.
Yeah.
Can't get a permit, can't get a CO without the street being present.
Okay.
So, and this is their offering to do our part of the public infrastructure.
They confront a green space, though,
Yeah, but this
Yeah.
is going to be a public street.
and you couldn't change it from a
No.
green space to a
Nope,
open
that's
street.
that's a reduction in open space. So,
Yeah, you'd be looking at modifications
Yeah.
for future build-outs, but
Right.
I understand your question.
Yeah.
It makes sense until you look at the.
We had similar questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really our code that's holding us.
if you go back to
this.
the downtown master plan, downtown transportation plan, it calls for a public street in this location.
yeah.
So they're here, they're willing to develop. This is when we get these things.
Yeah,
And not to mention, too, it'd be a capital improvement project for taxpayers to then build that portion.
right.
after the fact.
Agreed, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
I think I'm still stuck on why the commercial space seems really low to be at 8,000 square feet. And saying that that's a public street, I guess commercial frontage could move along Public Street A as well, turn on the building and go the other direction. Just the way the commercial is shaped and load in, load out, and the fact that there could be like 6 lawyers' offices there is, I think that's a little bit, I don't know, a little disturbing for the commercial space there. Like, there's no requirements not to have, I mean, it'd be great if we could have food service and retail, like, for sure, or something on that.
I think it doesn't necessarily have to be 6 1,000 square foot spaces. I think it was set up to be leasable. And the idea when Tom's talking about the warm vanilla shell, it's incredibly daunting for small businesses, coffee shop owners to not only try to find a space, but then have to go through the process of figuring out what it takes to upfit it to make it a viable space. And so we were trying to keep it right-sized for good local small businesses. Do you want to add on to that?
yeah, no, I think it actually, the way that we're trying to think about this is to provide more flexibility for the use profile type than just this has to be X or it has to be Y. The way that the ordinance reads and the code reads, it's a really wide range of uses that can go into commercial space more broadly. And so our intention, and we've taken this approach on some other projects too in the past, and it allows for a little bit more of an expedited path to having tenancy there for some of the reasons that Bridget mentioned. The intent is not for, competing uses, right, with multiple offices of the same service type or customer-facing business to be filling the space. What it's meant to do is provide an option that doesn't really exist in the market today for those small business users that is less daunting than a large tenant improvement upfit and a really complicated retail lease that just adds time to the process and complexity to the process, that this type of approach avoids. And it actually allows for a wider range of uses in terms of what could fill that space than saying, hey, this square footage, this footprint has to be X or Y. Does that make sense?
And vibrant spaces are better for your leasing too.
Sure, yeah, I mean, the thing that we're trying to avoid, right, is the commercial space as designed is, we think the primary entry is gonna be at the entry A there labeled, the northern entry. That's the full movement in and out. There'll be a left turn lane that we'll be constructing as part of the improvements off Old Statesville Road. And so the last thing we wanna do is have, a bunch of vacant shell space at the ground floor, at the front door of the project, in a place that is really kind of meant to be supportive of downtown per the 2040 plan.
I'm going to go back. You have a question? Go ahead.
I had asked a question earlier about Building D and its conversion to townhomes. I didn't see anything about that in the presentation. Is that being considered? If that is being considered, how many living units would be reduced there, and how many townhomes would that be converted into?
Yeah, I think, sure, happy to answer it. I think in rough terms, we're around 35 or so units in that building today. It's, as you can see on the plan, it's by far the smallest building on the project now from a multifamily perspective, because of essentially removing ourselves out of that 100-foot perennial buffer on the western boundary, sort of shifted everything a little bit further to the east. And so we lost some density just by way of making that move, which we were happy to do, and with a lot of collaboration with staff too. And so in that footprint, it'd probably be roughly 10 townhomes or so. It'd basically be duplicative of what you're seeing in terms of the two-story buildings to the west of it. It's roughly the same area when you factor in the alley and drive aisle and things of that nature to be able to access that. And in terms of how the project then becomes, where's sort of the inflection point of it being viable, the amount of density that we're showing here, we think allows the development to be able to move forward from a viability perspective. And then, if it were to shift to townhomes, the density starts to kind of go below a threshold where that viability starts to become more challenged.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, I was asking questions around that, or going to ask a question around that same line. So you're saying you would not entertain switching that to 2 townhomes to match what you have there?
I think we would have a hard time
Okay.
moving forward with a viable project, right? And that's the last thing we want to do is get something approved that can't be constructed.
What about a 2-story that would kind of go down to 24 units instead of 10 units?
Yeah, we could look at that. I think it's not maybe as simple of an answer because the site also has a good amount of topography overall too. So I don't want to speak out of turn in terms of before we had a chance to look at, the engineering of what that could be. But yeah, we can certainly study that.
That's what, I was getting ready to ask that same question, Chris, but I was also going to say, I wonder if you could do like a 3-story on the backside and 2, adjacent to the neighbor, since it kind of drops off towards that ravine.
Yeah, again, I think we'd have to study it a little further just to kind of understand the topographical difference, right? That's sort of what would be able to drive that being feasible or not. But we can certainly take a look at it.
So while we're on the Building D topic, have you had any conversations with the adjacent landowners in terms of maybe a solution for a one-off basis, whether that be additional screening or things like that? Have you approached those conversations? I know it's hard because it's a 3-story building. You can only screen so high. But
Sure. Yeah, I think not to come back to an item that we've already talked about, we're a little bit limited with what can happen in the public right-of-way. Is kind of the constraining factor.
Sure. What about something on that property
their
owner's
property?
property?
Sure, yeah.
Has that been discussed, or are you open to that concept at least, those discussions?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, he's here, I'm like, he can speak for himself, but essentially, he's right. The right-of-way is sort of, we've been looking at that as the limiting factor. We can't necessarily do something in the right-of-way and pass it on that the city doesn't want in their standard right-of-way. I don't think that precludes us at all from being able to have conversations about what we're able to do on the adjacent property owners. And to your point, I think sometimes it's a little hard, again, taking topography into consideration. You know, would a 6-foot privacy fence be helpful in this location or not? What things, I think we typically say that height is often softened by distance and existing tree canopy. And we've got a meaningful distance between our building placement and the existing building and meaningful tree canopy there, but we're happy to entertain that conversation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lee?
Make a few. It sounds like we got a couple forces that are up against your viability numbers. I guess I'll test those a little bit. I mean, the percent of commercial space, if you added more, I think you'd say that's not viable. Now, if we convert building D, whatever it was, to townhomes, you lose units and you lose some viability there. So, I mean, are we talking about points of margin here, or is this just trying to protect some of the turnover in the units themselves? It seems like there'd be some other ways we could find a middle ground here. I mean, if adding 22,000 square feet of commercial is too much, and maybe it is, maybe you finish adding out the frontage on adding commercial space to the units that front Old Statesville Road. Add another 8,000 or so, and then go back to building D and really, I mean, we've, beyond just the fact that we don't have any detached housing here that we require in this type of subdivision. Knock some of the number of units off, step them away. Seems like if you took the units off, you'd require less parking. You could reconfigure that area to make the townhome setting a little more natural. And use some of the property to the south, I guess, that's up against the tree line there. Seems like there's some things you could do to help us with, you know, some of our requirements about blending the new with the existing, step down in intensity, like was mentioned earlier, what we did with the North State project, where we took apartments into townhouses, into single family before they bled into Greenfield Park, which is what these people's property is one of the oldest communities in Huntersville. So that's kind of where we're at. We're asking for you to make a few more concessions on your viability number and give us a little more commercial and a little less density.
Absolutely appreciate the feedback and brought this slide back up to reflect where we started on the project and where we've landed today. And there were absolutely impacts by increasing the street network from where we originally started that sort of changed the whole network of how everything laid out and trying to get to a higher level of open space. And so there's been a good bit of push and pull as we've been trying to make this work throughout the process. I think we've certainly, we call it like moving the goalpost, we've certainly tried to move along and make as many adjustments as we can as we're going through this process. When we started this out, we were looking at 2 different zoning districts. When you're looking at your zoning districts, you have to pick which one is going to cause certain deviations. And so we landed on this one because we thought this got us the closest to aligning with the long-range land use plan in terms of high density in this location. And the reason I pulled this other image up, whenever I like to look at land use plans in their entirety, I try to look at it as the entire area, not just a specific parcel. And so it's not necessarily that you have to meet all of the goals of a development on one particular parcel, but how are you achieving them in the area? So I bring this up to show you that we've got our proposed mixed-use project site that's directly adjacent to an existing multifamily structure for senior housing. There's another parcel to the south that people have been looking at, and that's slated for a mix of single-family and townhomes by right in this particular area. And I think that shows you not just looking at our parcel as a standalone, but looking at how this area overall is part of an overall framework for growth and development. Anything?
No, I think that's helpful context, and we tried to look at things, again, you know, holistically as sort of this larger area, if you want to go back to that same slide, just being part of a housing cluster where there's a mix of housing opportunities today and in the future where, you know, again, on less than 10 acres of disturbed area and with the road network that actually makes up about 30% of that developed land, the right-of-way network that we've implemented or are planning to implement, you know, it starts to become a little bit more limiting in terms of, you know, how much land area you have to work with, and we tried to look at the surrounding context too, and the mixed-use center designation, and that's why we landed on the NC zoning type in terms of the target, because we felt like that the intent of that zoning district best aligned with the intent of what we were trying to deliver here.
Okay, you've pulled up this slide. This is your slide, not the town's.
Correct.
And what I'm seeing here is people within walkable distance to your commercial properties. So what I see is potential for commercial square footage. So the pushback of this isn't, you know, we won't be able to fill these spaces. When you look at this slide, it's very clear that the people will be there. I'm having a really hard time understanding the difference in that number, when, especially because you're aware that this is coming, and you're aware that these homeowners are going to be coming. They're going to want to walk to your community, just like they do in Burkdale, and go to your stores, your restaurants, your commercial square footage. So more of a comment than a question. Thank you.
Just one more. Are your townhomes for rent or sale?
The plan right now is for rent, but to be honest, we
Right, yeah, that's what-
haven't made the total decision yet, but again, trying to deliver the project all at one time. And we feel like there's an opportunity for someone who really likes the amenities at the community, they love the location, you know, needs in life change, they could stay on property and, you know, be in a unit that has more space and a bit of a different offering within the same community. So we do like that diversification element as well.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Do we have a motion?
I have a motion. In considering the proposed rezoning amendment petition R25-15, Old Statesville Road mixed use, the planning board recommends denial. The plan is inconsistent with policy LU-6 because the commercial space percentage is too low, and policy LU-7 and LU-11 because of the high percentage of apartments and attached housing. It is not reasonable and in the public interest to approve this rezoning.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Start the discussion. Go ahead with your motion.
Yeah, you know, I never come into these meetings fully with a made-up mind, but that last slide, it just got me. I can't unsee that. There are houses coming, there are people coming, the people are gonna be there. I think if we miss this opportunity, then it's gonna be a regret later. People want live, work, play. We've heard that over and over. I mean, that got pounded into our head with Burkdale. This is not an opportunity that we should pass up.
Thank you.
I'll go. I think they've done some very good things as far as making the changes, like to the watershed with the perennial stream buffer and the vegetative buffer. Also think the urban open space, I know we didn't discuss that, but that was very nicely added to the project. I think they definitely heard what the staff was saying and what the needs were from public hearing. But it still doesn't change that the rule is 60%, and we need 60% on commercial, and we've already failed at that in other places in the town of Huntersville. So I think we've got a rule is one of the rules that we have here, and I think that's important. I think walkability is not going to happen if we don't allow retail on our street fronts. And I love the idea we can walk around the town core. And I agree, I had live, work, play written down many times as well, because we are told that over and over and over again. So I think it could be a great project. I just think there's some things like Building D to think about your neighbors, and the commercial property needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, I'll keep it rolling with some of those same sentiments, I guess. So, yeah, the downtown area, this area is starved for commercial space, and we can show it. We can show that store frontage in Rosedale turns over quickly. We're getting a Smash Burger down there now, we've learned. Even store frontage in the Food Line Shopping Center, bless its heart. We're getting an Ace Hardware is coming in there. So we are starved for commercial space. We don't have any really new commercial space downtown other than what's in Holbrook 1 now. And all our old space is full and vibrant. So I don't see the reasoning. And is there an equation where you could track these trends? No, because it's also, point in time is very hard to dial in. Like Jesse was saying, what's hot today is dead tomorrow. You just got to plan. These buildings are going to be here for 40 or 50 years, so you can't really look at way things trend right now. You got to look out in the future how you want your downtown, and this is in downtown, how you want it to look. And you're driving into Huntersville before you get to the traffic circle, and you're looking around to see what you got, and it's going to be a wall of apartments versus something in the bottom floor that interests you, a restaurant, a coffee shop, whatever. I'd rather have that. So up the commercial space, and then again, the Building D overlooking the residents. Some of our oldest properties in Huntersville that needs to be tamped down so we can show that we are stepping down the intensity as we approach some of the older homes in the area. So great project. It just needs a couple tweaks, and we could support it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of or support the motion recommending denial to the town board? Those opposed? Did you vote? Okay, so that was unanimous. And again, it's a recommendation to the town board. You know, hopefully some of those details can be worked out, because it is a nice project. Moving on to 4B, consider a recommendation on petition R2516, request to rezone 44 acres at the northeast corner of Sanford Road and Old Statesville Road for commercial and multifamily development. Mr. Priest.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll enter the staff report into the record and begin a brief presentation for R2516 Knox Crossing mixed use. So the application is located here. And I'll just try to be kind of more brief on the slides because some of this was discussed during the public hearing. So this is the northeast corner of Old Statesville Road and Highway 73 Sanford Road, as shown in the hatched area. The application is to rezone from corporate business conditional district to transit-oriented development residential conditional district and highway commercial conditional district. So site plan highlights, the updated site plan is in the top right of the slide. Again, aspect of this plan that is unique, it is right to the south of the proposed transit stop, the commuter rail line. So the application includes up to 82,000 square feet, that's the maximum per the condition of commercial, and up to 486 total units, apartments and townhomes for residential. And it's not shown on the site plan here, but if you look at the site plan on the upper right, the rezoning line from the TOD to the highway commercial is right there in where the horizontal from the left to right or east to west street goes through. To the north is TODR, to the south is highway commercial. And I can explain that a little bit better if I need to as we move on to the slides. Plan updates, just some brief updates on what's changed on the site plan since the public hearing. So if you look at that, the roundabout a little bit to the west of it, one of those townhome buildings was changed to a live-work building. Staff was recommending a little bit more commercial in that area, so the applicants kindly switched that up to try to get more mixed use in the center of the area. So that was a good addition. A screen mural public art wall was placed in between that park to the north, in between the townhomes and the grocery parking to the south. So that was an addition as well. That could be helpful in screening that parking lot. And then also a larger one there, the condition to include 5% attainable housing units was increased to 7.5%. So that's between 31 and 37 actual units, depending upon the final number there. So those are big changes there. Modifications to the ordinance through the conditional process are listed here. There are several of them. I won't go through all of them, but I'll be happy to answer any questions about them after the presentation. Staff is supportive of most. Some we wanted to see a little bit more design in lieu and in the stead of some of the requirements that are shown, and we can discuss those. So constraints, staff is going to kind of go through some recommendations that we have and things that we're recommending seeing in the design, but we do acknowledge there are site design constraints with this site, and they're listed out here. Siegel Street Extension, the north-south road, where the townhome, the apartments front, and going all the way down and intersecting Highway 73, that is a thoroughfare on the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. So that basically has to be there. That can't move around, right? That's got to be where it needs to be. There are stream buffers on the plan as described there in the staff report. Highway 73 is a super street design, so access is limited and left turn lanes are going to be limited. Katz Rail Bridge, so we talked about the commuter rail line to the north and the station to the north. The plan is to take that right-of-way on the west part of the map there and do a grade separated bridge that is going to basically cut off access to 115 on that side, on the western side. So can't have a public street go and connect all the way to 115 like you would normally desire to do. And then, of course, we'll have some discussion about the Seam Trail, and was mentioned during the public comment section going through this property as well. So trying to put all these elements together like a puzzle, it can prove challenging, and so staff acknowledges that, and still working together on trying to make the final product work. So the site plan discussions, on the top right, I will say Heather Maloney is our transportation planner, and she is here and can give a little bit of background if you have any questions about the Seam Trail study and where we have gotten from where we were to where we are now, and where we have the actual map on the top right in regard to the concept plan that our consultant has drawn to try to take this plan and overlay the Seam Trail in a way that's functional and usable and recommended by a couple of our committees, the Huntersville Greenway Committee and also the Seam Trail Advisory Committee, which is functioning under the Metropolitan Planning Organization, CRIPTO, we call them, that is recommending this layout. So essentially, without going through the whole history, looking at that top right map, you see the Seam Trail coming from the very top, and I don't know if I can I draw on this with my finger? Okay, let's see if it works. No, do I have to? I'm sorry, please be patient with me. This is my first time on the new. I don't see a. There we go. It appeared. That's it. Whoever did that, thank you. So yes, that's the Seam Trail orientation there. As you'll see, it goes to Highway 73, and what's proposed now is the best way to do it, because again, we said two things. There's a CATS facility going over the railroad, right? So CATS has informed staff that putting the Greenway Trail along that bridge would not be an option. It would not be feasible to do that. In regard to having an at-grade crossing where Siegel Street Extension meets 73, that's very difficult with essentially a highway, having a nice, safe pedestrian path through there, so that's problematic. So what do? The different routes were examined, and the best route that was recommended was to go underneath 73. So if you look at the grades of Highway 73, again, real briefly, 73 is mounded up, and on each side it kind of comes down. So it's somewhat ideal for punching through a tunnel to be able to make through and put a pedestrian path, similar to the tunnel that we put out on 77 near Highway 21, near the Bojangles and all that good stuff over there. So that's the recommendation. So that's really a recommendation that we're still working with the applicant on in regard to the recommendations we got from our committees and the Seam Trail Committee about making this more of a linear park, making it a focal point of the development, really an amenity and something that's highlighted through it. Still working on that, as you'll see in the picture from the site plan. Currently, the trail is kind of shoehorned a little bit, squeezed in between the parking lot and the gas station, and is a little bit limited. We'd like to see it a little bit more natural, a little bit wider, green, and we have some slides on that to show some examples of exactly what staff is referring to. The aspects of the plan in regard to separating the north and the north being TOD and the south being highway commercial. We've been working with the applicant to try to blend the two characters of those different zoning districts better together, right? If you look at the actual plan, the north has buildings that are very close to the street. The parking is all in the back. But on the highway commercial side, parking is somewhat predominant. There are automotive type uses, gas station, drive-throughs. So we're working at narrowing that down and trying to get that a little bit more blended in. Open space amenitization, we've gotten the slides from the applicant, and we've seen a little bit more of what they're looking to do with the open space, so we're looking at that. The pond amenitization or screening, as noted here on the screen, a very nice intersection where you've got mixed-use buildings and perhaps some really nice plazas in between the buildings and the roundabouts, and some commercial on the other side, but then there's kind of a big hole on the other corner. So what can we do with that so it doesn't detract from the other corners, and amenitize it, screen it, but in a way that's architectural perhaps, that really adds to it rather than takes away. Shopping center elevations, still looking for those and raising that excellence in design in that way. Huntersville 2040 plan, consistencies. Essentially, the uses themselves, the intensity, this is kind of the place to put it. Long story short, if you're putting higher intensity, if you're putting mixed use, you're at a section where you're at the intersection of two major thoroughfares. You're at a section where a Seam Trail Greenway is going through, and you're immediately to the south of a commuter rail line. So the infrastructure would be there, and so the intensity is something that staff recommends hits the mark in our activity center. Where we're still struggling again is kind of the design. And just from a very big picture standpoint, what I highlight here is the urban design principles box in policy LU 7.1 in regard to having the urban design principles. And it brings out the town of Huntersville uses a form-based approach of mixed use and non-residential development that discourages large-scale commercial strips and disconnected uses. So that kind of goes back to, again, blending the two sections of the development a little bit better. They're not really disconnected uses, but they almost seem like two different developments, right? So you've got the very highway commercial suburban oriented to the south. and then you've got the intense more apartment to the north. In contrast, picture of Birkdale is there, right? So instead of the activity, the intensity, and the density being along 73, whereas Birkdale's is interior, where you have the mixed-use buildings, you have the commercial, you have large central urban open space. That's where the intensity is, that's where the walkability is, and where all the connection is. Proximity is walkability. So when you have all the commercial and everything on 73, it kind of takes away from that urban feel and that mixed-use capability, right? So staff's recommendation, as per the staff report, was to try to blend that a little bit more. You know, there's market demands that ideally where the grocery store goes, the 45,000 square foot grocery store would further go interior to the site. There's market constraints, there's tenant constraints that we understand the applicant is working with as well that won't let that happen. So with that in mind, there's other items that staff is focusing in on. Opportunities for excellence in design. We feel it's important to give examples of, if we're saying we're recommending something, we're looking at examples to say this is what we're talking about. The number one, the linear park through the development accommodating the greenway, that's something that we feel it could be really an amenity for this development, and having a larger green area. So that's something that I'll show a couple pictures on. But also, just to the north a little bit, in Cornelius and Davidson, they have some nice opportunities for mixed-use grocery stores, where you see there's a grocery store that's back off the exit, the main highway, and it's perimetered. It's almost hidden by two-story commercial and residential apartment buildings, making a very walkable, almost a main street in that area. So that's the type of development and the type of intensity that staff is looking for. When we say automotive, highway commercial, suburban versus the urban, I think this is a good example of the built environment that's a little bit different and shows itself to be a little bit different. And we listed some other opportunities there as well, and we like the really unique, and the bottom left is a gas station, two-story in Texas. So there's opportunities to do really unique, innovative things, and we're still working with the applicant to make that happen. And just some other examples of two-story commercials that are here in the Lake Norman area that are possibilities. For the greenways, what do we mean when we say a linear park? Had a couple examples here. On the far left-hand side, this is down near the Metropolitan in Charlotte, near the Little Sugar Creek Greenway. You notice the lighting, the wide path, and the wide landscaping and green area in this very urban setting. And you see both of those pictures, but then you also see in Atlanta and the Beltline, the same type of thing. Very wide green area, very natural, and something like this would be very good in that situation. Of course, in the top right, the artwork in the park-like setting right outside, right, in our downtown, going into the downtown Huntersville Greenway. So that's something that we're still working with, and that's an example of what we think would be very good in this location. So staff supports the intensification, right? It's in a great location. It's where it needs to be, but we're looking at the design and the urban design concerns that we have. Staff doesn't recommend approval at this time. The applicant will come and probably discuss about again, kind of similar to the last one, the market restraints and where that is, and so staff understands that. And if the board deems that this type of the highway commercial-oriented design is appropriate, that's fine. But there's a list that we have that we think are minimums for staff to get behind and recommend, we feel strongly about. So that'll conclude the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Just like the last presentation, the applicant has a PowerPoint. Would like to go over that with you. But however order you want to make, I'd be happy to go through that.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
Good. Just to add to that, just got a quick note from the applicant. Given the number of changes that they have done since the staff report was submitted, they would ask that if it's in your purview that they would like to do their presentation prior to questions of staff, because they believe they should be able to answer some of those. It's up to you guys, how you guys want to run the meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, great.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I'm Susan Irvin with Irvin Law Group. It's good to be here again. Second time, I'm getting a little used to it. The new space and how big it is and how far away you are from the podium. But I just want to do a quick introduction. The location, I think I want to thank Brad and Brian for the journey that we have taken. We filed this application in November. We are in our fourth submittal. We've had several continuing meetings with staff, continuing to evolve this plan. Started out with some initial comments, and as we've kind of fine-tuned the plan, we've gotten into more and more details. So we really appreciate that, a very thorough presentation. This first slide is really just to show you that this is a key piece of the puzzle for the transit station. What is approved there now is a continuation of the industrial that you see to the east. But to have the north-south connector go through this property and have the Seam Trail go through the property, as was earlier mentioned, the importance of that, this type of development will provide that. WRS is here. Kevin Rogers, a representative. WRS has 45 mixed-use and retail anchored centers across the southeast. I presented some images of a project that they did in Gaithersburg, Maryland at the public hearing, just to show the quality of the development, which is extremely high for this company. I do want to say that we're going to talk about some of the changes that we've made since the application. I'd like to hand it over to Dimitri Bacchus, the planner for this project, the master planner, and really ask him to address the planning comments, and we'd love to answer all questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Dimitri Bacchus. I'm with Metricology. I'm the urban design and city planner for WRS on this project. I also want to thank Brian and Brad and staff. We've been working now, I think, not only have we submitted 3 or 4 times, but we've also met in person 3 or 4 times to go over this plan. All the intricacies, I think Brad did a fantastic job describing to you the challenges, so I'm not going to go over them in detail at the moment, but they will come up in questions. But the key ones, the super street, the Katz Rail Line Bridge, which is a giant concrete wall which basically blocks off the entirety of the western side of the project, and our topography. You can see in close-up, all of our elevation differences are basically 80 feet from high to low, and they're almost all there in the front where we have our main access. So these are important pieces. Brad did say that he described to you how we're zoning it, and he was accurate. He was correct in doing so. This is actually a plan, I think, give you a good detail of how that is going to be. We've taken that east-west street with the highway commercial, which is the preponderance of the 1/3 of the site to the south that faces the highway that's being built, and the corner, which is the most obstructed by the future Katz rail line. And we put the residential up on the northern end, which is also the closest to the transit stop, putting everybody within walking distance who's going to live here within walking distance of that site. Not just within walking distance, but a pleasurable walk and a very quick walk. We're talking less than 5 minutes, which is a pretty great statistic to show. The plan itself, as Brad explained, it's almost like a silicon chip. Every inch, every foot something is moved or jogged around has ripple effects throughout the entire project because of the way that the site, the property itself is configured, and the constraints and the challenges that were put on the site. We actually didn't think of them as challenges as much because they're opportunities. The north-south road that runs through the Seam Trail is fantastic, and I'm going to show you how we've accomplished incorporating that into the project, which I think we've done a very good job with, and we have been making modifications since we've been speaking with staff. To go over just some of the things that we have been doing since we started the application process. The plan, as I said, hasn't changed significantly in terms of the disposition of sort of the layout because of the constraints that we spoke about. It's very difficult to move things around. For example, if you picture that grocery store in the bottom, that grocery store comes with it, that parking. So moving that north or east, We have wetlands areas that are part of the property that the Corps of Engineers controls. Costs become increasingly prohibitive as you move into that. Moving to the north, you then move a lot of the residential that will have access to the station. That gets moved to the south, which is also the least amenable for residential because it's basically next to a highway at this point with a giant concrete wall for cats to the west. So really, things settled as they're showing here. But as Brian and Brad have been saying, and as others in the town have been describing to us, it's in the details, which I think we're beginning to nail down quite well. The park areas to the north, you'll notice that the pocket park and the park, we've actually made them to blend in with the development to the north, so that the Seam Trail and the park that we're calling the Green, which I'll go over in just a moment, actually incorporate and flip over into that project. So these two projects will seem seamless as you're walking through them or driving through them. They won't look like two different projects. I think that's very important, both from a character point of view and amenitizing the sites for both the projects. The multifamily buildings, we have repositioned those things. It may not look like a lot, but every inch, as I said, counts. We have moved them back and forth, trying to do several things simultaneously. One, we want to open up a gap to get the pedestrian passage east-west, which you see there in that arrow in the green line, to get all the people that live on the apartment side of the street to the east to be able to access all of the amenity spaces that we're providing, again, in less than 2 minutes in some instances. This is very tightly planned. Moving those, also we had to keep in mind, we don't want to open up spaces such that you are actually seeing the parking behind. As you move through this system on the ground, don't look at it from the sky because people don't fly over it like a bird. They're going to participate in it on the ground walking. And as you walk through this, you're not going to see parking. Just as in Birkdale, you don't see the parking, but it's a giant sea of parking with a shopping center without a roof in the middle of it. Right? So this is the same thing in reverse. The parking is all hidden by the buildings that we placed and how we placed them. If you move your finger through there and walk through, you'll notice you're either in a park enclosed by buildings or in an urban street enclosed by buildings. We moved a rear lane. We were told that the street was too long to the left there and not have any access for emergency vehicles and just for convenience. So we added a rear lane there. And in doing that, we had to keep, again, the distances between the buildings such that we could, again, complete the spaces and increase the size of the open space pocket park so that the Seam Trail could access into our site and head south. Ground floor retail and the live-work units were added to the roundabout to make that our town center, and we'll go over that in detail in just a moment. We agreed and decided that the retention pond should be fully screened. So we're going to completely screen that. It will look like a park space with trees as you're looking at it from both the road, the apartments, and the roundabout. So it's going to be a beautiful sort of backdrop to all of that. The mural wall that Brad was talking about, we felt that expanding the street that is between there, by the way, can be closed off. It's designed with pavers so that when it's closed off for festivals and special events, it looks like it's part of the open space system. On the south side of that, we agreed it would be a good idea to go ahead and screen that with a mural wall, which we have done. So we're putting a 6-foot wall that can have art along it, and it would be partially landscaped in places so that it's not one giant long wall. The Carolina Seam Trail, we'll get into more detail in just a moment. I'm going to leave that for a moment so we have time for the questions as well. But we designed it. We took their path and the intent of the sort of concept design that was handed to us. And then we said, okay, how do we make this real? How do we put this thing in here so that it stays in there forever? And as this place gets redeveloped in the 10, 20 to 50 years, that it will as the station gets developed, how do we incorporate that in the future to make it a fantastic trail? I'm going to go over that with you shortly. I think we've accomplished that, and you'll see why in just a moment. The gas station, we have designed it now so that the face of it that is at the access point where the tunnel will go under presents a corner that's not a service corner. It would be, at some point, we're going to be designing it in detail. It would have a corner, just like the retail on the other side of the entry point, which would have a plaza and some sort of interface with the trail, which would be below here. Remember, this will be depressed down at that point. And the park size has been increased. The area where the tunnel would go under, we've increased the size to accommodate the dimensions that were given to us in the concept plan. The spaces, we've always been talking about this, how to create places around which people can live. We've got the lawn, the square, the park, the garden, and the plaza. And you can see that with those walking radius, everybody is within a short walk, less than 5 minutes. Actually, this is probably 3-minute walks to all of these spaces. Brad and Brian suggested that we narrate what that means. We'd shown them just as names, but we said, okay, actually, that's a good idea. How do you program them? What do you do with them? So we have the lawn, which has a dog park in it, turf areas, elements, accessible water fountains, pathways, and connectivity, covered seating, and canopy screen training. This is more of the calm, quieter open space for the residents of the development. The square would be the active town center. It's actually the other anchor of the town square that Peak Development was approved for at the train station, right? So these two barbells are within like a 6-minute walk of one another. So this is a fantastic opportunity to make those work. And this is going to be all of the same things that you see in a town center: dining, outdoor seating, lighting, landscaping. The park is the neighborhood congregating room, sort of the front lawn of the neighborhood. There'd be a playground in there, and that also is where we receive the Seam Trail. The Seam Trail is going to go through this property, and it will always be in a park situation, which is going to be unique. It's not going to be just the Seam Trail. It's a Seam Trail in a pocket park. It's the Seam Trail alongside a giant neighborhood park. It's the Seam Trail going into the town square. As we move south, the only place that the Seam Trail is not incorporated into an actual larger open space is just the gap between where it goes under and comes back out at grade to come to where our stream is. Remember, our stream is a wetland, core wetland, so that has to stay. We've incorporated a 25-foot area for that trail on the western side of that, but as you walk it, you're overlooking about an acre. The garden, we have community gardens that forms the buffer, and the plaza, which is the downtown component of it, as the gateway into the site off of the highway. The architecture, we've redeveloped our plans for the elevations, the townhomes, the live works, the retail, and the apartments. The grocery store, we're still working with staff and working with the architects to incorporate the same color palette and materials on that. And then we have the views that you would be looking at. View number 1, just above the roundabout, looking down the main residential street. You see the multifamily with the ground floor retail and the 2 plazas on either side. 2 is a lower level eye shot of that plaza, highly active. It is the core, and this road that you see in front of you, as I said, can be closed for special events. It becomes part of the open space. The pedestrian plazas that we've got now, and the pedestrian passages that we're incorporating through the site, I think that's about a 20-foot easement, a 20-foot gap now that we've actually programmed with landscaping and seating and lighting. And then the commercial on the other side of the roundabout that would form the other half of the anchor. And remember, the other side of it would be the lake, which would be completely screened by trees. And this shot shows you the Seam Trail along the park that would be founded by the residential on both sides. It will be the townhome. Future development, redevelopment, you can see, and we can get into this detail later, but how the block system works and why the thread trail is the way it is. And we'll explain that more as the questions come in.
Okay, thank you. This slide is community benefits, may not be something that is, something the planning board looks at, but I did want to point out the attainable residential units and the economic benefits, the EV charging stations. I don't know, people will say affordable housing isn't a planning issue. I think it is. But this just gives you kind of a summary of a lot of the benefits of this project. And then I did want to go through kind of the list of comments, and as we've gone through these and we've worked on this, timing-wise, we submitted our revised plan by the agenda deadline, but we said at the public hearing that we would work on getting the perspectives together, and we did that in time for the planning board, and we wanted to go through all of these and have met with staff to discuss the various issues. Some were just miscommunications, like the automotive uses limitation. We have no problem with that. Automotive uses isn't a defined term, so I thought that just meant anything you could drive through, but Brad and Brian said, no, it's actually no drive-through windows in restaurants. That's fine. No automotive repair shops. I mean, nothing like that would be planned. All of the comments that were made we agree with, and we can nail down all the details and all the minor comments between now and the vote. One thing that we want to work on is phasing plan, and just having a better discussion with just getting down into the details with planning about the design of the greenway. So thank you so much. I mean, we came right down to the wire, but happy to share any other information with you. We have some extra images in the appendix. But open any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start with questions. Michael?
Yeah, this is probably getting a little bit into the weeds, but the topography of that particular site is extremely problematic, and to me, it translates into risk. If somebody can make us feel comfortable about the ability to actually make the transition from current topography to the new, given its complexity, would be very helpful.
So go back to you want to go back to the slide?
Do we have the, Yeah, so what you can see, the topography is quite extreme. From Sam Fur, it drops basically, well, I won't say vertical, it's a serious drop down to the wetland area and the stream, and then it rises back up again severely, but then kind of gradually peters off into a hilltop. So it's about an 80-foot difference. Now what we're looking at, obviously, is we're going to have to grade and push everything to the north to a point in and around that stream bed we can't impact the wetland area per the Corps, so we have to shoehorn around it and come in and then engage Sam Fur at grade at Sam Fur. Obviously working with the NCDOT as they're doing their super street design, but that will all be level. When you're driving down Sam Fur, minus all the distractions that the DOT will put in, you will then see the buildings. They're not going to be down in a pit. They're not going to be way up high. Was that your question in general?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how do you ensure that the risk impact is minimized, you know? So I know what you got to do. The real question is how do you do it without incurring a degree of risk that could disrupt the project?
We have our engineer here, Kelly Wagner, if you want to come up and answer that. The short answer is we know how to do it and we make sure it's done that way. But if you want to get in more detail.
Well, maybe ask differently. What project have you done that's like this one with that kind of topography?
So I've been doing this for 25-something years.
Just looking for another site that you've done this on already.
Yeah. Going through my memory banks on this, I did what we call Arnold Commons Triangle in Arnold, Missouri. More severe than this as far as topography goes. We had, that particular site was maybe 60 acres, supported a Lowe's, a Dearborg's grocery store, retail shops, several out parcels, heavily commercial. We relocated a VFW, which those guys were a hoot if you go and meet with a lot of old veterans that's been in combat. But I would say that's probably the closest as far as kind of topography and challenges that we've had. I've stared at this project for over a year, trying to figure out how to do it, and what we're proposing can be done. And if there's any particular, like, specific questions.
I just want to make sure that as we give consideration to it, that that's one of the factors. It's not just that it's a level,
Sure.
site. This is one that, if you guys get it right, it's fantastic. But if there's something that is a surprise and like, oops, we didn't anticipate that, that's a whole different thing. Because we got a project up there now that's just sitting there empty.
Yes, sir.
Kind of built out. The last thing we need is a partial development and realize that there's a problem with completion.
Yes, sir. I completely understand. And you got to be able to see a plan and think in 3D, for sure. And so I think, we've graded this out a couple different ways. I think to what Susan and Dimitri were alluding to, when you're standing there looking at the project with it's built, you're not going to see something in a hole. It is all going to be kind of, it's going to be a cohesive kind of project and working around those topography things. We've got retaining walls on the project to save and stay out of our environmental areas. You know, we've got a limitation as far as what we can do with the wetland impacts and stream impacts. We've worked through preliminarily all the hydro drainage, stormwater calculations, and have everything working right now. So certainly there's a lot of detail and design that has to continue forward, but in concept, this is a doable project, yes.
Thank you. Next. Chris?
Yeah. So my mind kind of goes to, one, the timeline of your development with respect to the Super Street, Highway 73. I don't know if you've studied that at all. What is your timeline for opening up the grocery store and the apartments? And then when is 73 going to be developed? Because, you know, it's already very trafficy as it is, and I didn't know if those would correlate at all.
I don't know, Kevin, if you want to answer that question about timing on this project. I know what it is on DOT.
Kelly, what is the date that DOT has given us to commence their work on Sanford? Okay, so generally speaking, nothing ever lines up perfectly.
Right.
If they start next year, kind of build a clock here, if you will. We've got.
We would talk about it for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly something that, you know, I think everybody would be happy to program.
Yeah, and just before the bridge, I mean, it's going to be a while before the bridge goes.
Right.
I mean, they're pointing essentially their loading area and that kind of stuff toward that area. So there would be a screening and buffering of landscaping in that area to make sure all that's screened. Now, separate of that and making kind of like a corner structure and, you know, trying to make it kind of like an urban corner and make it not look like there's a cat's bridge that's unsightly, right?
Yes.
You know, that's an additional discussion, but one could be had.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question on the sort of the southwest corner. Sort of maybe explain some of the challenges y'all had with maybe keeping the retail connected, so to speak. You know, we have the grocery store, and then, you know, there's some gaps or spaces to some of the others. As opposed to some of the slides that were shown where, like, you know, the grocery store may be attached to some accessory type buildings.
Like he's asking, you know, if you did something where you had the grocery anchor and attached shops, you know, why you can't do that here?
Yep.
Make it
It's,
kind of like
it's
an
not an
urban
apples to
corner
apples
and make
comparison,
it
the
not
other
look
grocery
like
store
there's a
locations that were
cat's
shown
bridge
and
that's
with this
unsightly,
grocery
right?
store location.
You know, that's an additional
We are
discussion.
shoehorned
but
in
one
this
could be had.
particular site for a number of reasons, topographically,
Question on
the
sort of
wetlands that are
southwest
there,
corner.
and how we want to be
Sort of
able to make
maybe
sure that we are
explain some of the
accessing and providing the
challenges y'all
biggest
had
oomph for our buck with the
keeping
residential as close as we can get it to the,
so to speak.
to the train stop, which is just off this site. So as we were saying earlier, if you envision that grocery store footprint and its parking as one package, those two things move together, and they can move slightly
as opposed
off
to some of the
center with one
slides
another,
that
but
were
they
shown,
always are attached at the hip.
Store may be attached
So
to
moving that anywhere else in
accessory
that
type
space, you will see it will move everything else around it to create the space for it. And in that movement, you're moving into areas that are the constraints that we have based on topography and how we need to make sure that we can financially do it correctly. It's not an apples to We apples get into the comparison. wetlands issue with the grocery store stream, locations and then we
that
get
are
into,
shown
again, the
as
visibility
grocery store
and the
locations.
issues
You know,
with how
that's an additional
the north-south
discussion.
shoehorned in is a mandate, right? So that's fixed. For a number of It's reasons, not going to be able to move that much. topographically, So really, once we started looking at this, and wetlands we that are showed there, it to potential and how grocery we store wanna be users, able and many to have make looked sure at that this, we and there's are many on the accessing line and right now that are providing the looking biggest oomph to for go our- there. for our buck with the All of residential them as close as we can said, get it to this is the the, only place we can put to this to the make this train work. stop, which is just If off that this- north-south off street this had site. been an actual So as through we were street, saying which is no earlier, longer is if you because the envision DOT that- is making no that grocery store signal footprint at that and its intersection, parking as it's one not package, the those sort two of things piece of move infrastructure together. that was They can envisioned move by the slightly town to to be a network piece of infrastructure
off
anymore because the
Center
DOT
Point,
has made that
they all
impossible.
are attached at the head.
So that street is no longer a
Moving that
major
anywhere
street.
else
There's
in
not
that
enough
space,
traffic on
you
there
can
to
see
put
it
a
will-
grocery
it will-
store.
it will move everything else
So all
around
of these
it to create the
combinations of
space for
factors
it.
come into
And
play
then that
when we
movement,
look at
moving
where's the
areas
best
that
place
are
for the store now
constraints
that would
we
actually
have
work
based on
economically and
topography and how
actually have an
we need to
anchor
make sure that we can
that would
finance
tenant to
it
it,
correctly,
while also providing the best possible location for open spaces and residential on the site that don't then also impact the ability to grade it correctly and protect the wetlands. So it's a multiple phase thing.
Right, and one other question about that, and leaving the site, say if you were coming from the east,
To go there.
would you have,
All
I
of
guess you
them
have to use
said
Jamesburg,
that this is the
because
only
if you
place we can
turn
put
right,
this
you'd
to
have to
make
train
this
through
work.
the intersection.
If
then
that
do a
north-south street
turn
had been an
back.
actual through street, which it no longer is because the
Jamesburg doesn't
DOT
have a
is making
signal.
no signal at that intersection. It's not the sort of piece of infrastructure that was envisioned by the town
Yeah.
to be a network piece of infrastructure anymore because the DOT has made that impossible. So
Right.
that street is no longer a major street.
Okay.
There's not enough traffic on there to put a grocery store.
everything
So,
all of these combinations
going to what
of
you
factors
said, I
come into
think
play
the
when we
development
look
to the
at
north, if
where's
I'm
the best
remembering
place for the
correctly,
store now that
had
would
like
actually work
option A,
economically,
B, C. Like, I'm
actually
sure
have an
you've
anchor
developed,
that we can
and
attend
it would
to
probably be a lot of work,
while also
but
providing
if
the
you could
best
see,
possible
hey,
location
this
for
is
open
what it
spaces
looks like
and
with the grocery
residential
store to the back,
on
the
the site
residence to
that
the
don't
front.
then also
And
impact
this
the
is what
ability
it's
to grade
causing,
it
right? You've got,
and
dead
protect
space
the-
here that you can't
and
really
wetlands.
use. And if you
So it's
put
a
residents
multiple
here, you
phase
got a
thing.
longer walk there, plus the noise to the
One
street.
other
I feel
question
like
about that, and-
what Brad is asking is, have we vetted all those other options? And, a visual for those when you present next time, if there's another presentation, might be good, right? And just kind of look at A, B, and C and why this is the best one, because I kind of see what you're saying. And then my next question was really for Brad. I mean, you wanted more of a antiquity feel or something like that, right? Where you come in and there's stores on both sides and the grocery stores in the back, but then you're pushing like apartments further away from the stop and closer to 73 and closer to this ugly wall. So I guess what was your thought process on where the grocery store should be located?
So ultimately, yes, the first location would probably be here.
If you could see,
It's not working for
what
me.
it looks like
Are
with
you
the
thinking
grocery
right
store
here?
to
No,
the back, the
no,
residents
to
to
the-
front.
to the northeast.
And this is what it's causing, right? You've got dead space here that you can't really use. Oh, sorry, I was And if you undoing put mine. residents here, you've got a longer walk there. Yeah, come draw plus the mine. noise Yeah. to the street. I feel like what Brad is asking is, have we vetted all those other options? And
this area
a
here.
visual for those when you present next
there
time, if there's
or
another
there.
presentation. might
Either
be
one.
good, right?
Either parking,
And just kinda
building,
look at
building,
A, B,
parking,
and
one
C,
way or the
and
other.
why this is the best one.
Closer
'Cause I
to the
kinda see what you're
residential,
saying. And
closer
my
to the
next question
stop,
was really for
and
Brad.
then
I mean, you
residential
wanted
in this
more of
area.
a
We understand,
antiquity
though,
feel or something like
again, with
that,
the
right? Where
constraints,
you come in
the
and
bridge
there's
being
stores
right
on both
here,
sides
having
and the grocery
residential
stores
right
in the
here
back.
is
But then
not
you're
ideal.
pushing
Right.
like apartments
So that-
further
that
away
limits
from
that.
the stop
So
and closer
I
to
think the
73.
biggest item is
and closer
with
to
it
this
not
ugly
being
wall.
there.
So I guess what was your
having
thought
more
process on where the
emphasis
grocery store should be located?
here. So ultimately, as far as the first location, one specific element we've talked about is not working for me. The grocery store, no. The gas station to the northwest, parking goes and shifts down towards 73, and the building is more here, maybe a mixed-use building, apartment building, or what have you.
Yeah, come draw mine.
And then it truly starts blending in the center and activating. However, we understand that the grocery has certain needs and certain demands, and we're talking about that. Needs to have a gas station, needs to have parking immediately in the front, needs to have the drive-through. So there's certain elements that stop that concept of activity from the applicant's point of view.
Really for Brad.
But those are the types of moves that we discuss in the constraints.
And I guess that's where I was kind of going to talk about those moves and why you think those are cons. So everybody can kind of think through
that
those.
further away from
the stop
So
and closer
I
to
think the
73.
biggest item is
It's not necessary, but
having more emphasis
I hear you.
here. So ultimately, as far as the first location, one specific element we've talked about is not working for me. The grocery store, no. The gas station goes away, parking goes and shifts down towards 73, and a building just more here, maybe a mixed-use building.
So there is
apartment building, or what have you.
want to have
And then it
the
truly
symmetry
starts
of blending
blending
suburban natural
in the center
There's also
and
the want to have
activating.
the symmetry of the
However, we understand that grocery has certain needs and certain demands, and when you were talking about that, it needs to have a gas station, it needs to have parking immediately in the front,
Put a
it
building
needs to have
on
a
it,
drive-through.
you're
There's certain
making
elements that
trail
stop that.
less flow
From the house to the point
which is impossible to do now anyway.
But those are the types of needs that we discussed.
And I guess that's where I was kind of going to talk about those moves and why you think those are coming, so everybody can kind of think of that.
So, I think the biggest item is
It's not necessary.
We felt like
having
the open
more
space
emphasis
component
I hear you.
with the wall that's
here. So as far as the first location, one specific element we talked
screen the
about
parking
is
would serve as that building.
no,
That if we
if
put a
the
single
gas station goes away, parking goes shifts down to 73, and the building is more here.
Grocery store. So there is a cascade.
And then it truly
Did you
starts
consider
center.
those little small buildings
However, we
that,
understand
like Burkdale has on the green? I mean, that, yeah, those little small,
needs to have a gas
because I
station, needs to have parking immediately.
hear what everybody's saying, but this, that would maybe give it that same, you know, retail component without the big, huge building that requires a whole bunch of extra parking.
So that's a great idea in a different setting, again, the apples to apples comparison. So right here, what we were thinking is that's why that, in our thought process was, how do we activate that? We can't activate it full-time all the time because those jewel boxes are sitting in the median, in the median that is surrounded by other uses. So it's almost like an airport terminal. The little jewel boxes in the building are there because there's a lot of people walking around. We don't have that here, but we do have the opportunity to close off that street. You'll see it's a brown color. It's brown because we're indicating pavers. But what happens when that street closes, and that street can totally be closed off in this whole design function. Right, so special events means that that street closes, the park to the north, the open space, this creek, and the plazas to the east, and that stretch of road between the parking lot and the park all get integrated into one thing. And you can have, for example, food trucks. And vendors and users pop in there for those special events, and then when the event is gone, it becomes a street again. And that's a great idea. So we activate it that way to get exactly what you're talking about. Right here, what we were thinking is that's why that, in our thought process, was how do we activate that? We can't activate it full-time all the time because those jewel boxes are sitting in the median that is surrounded by
And
other
the Harris
uses. So
Teeter
that's
Shopping Center.
it's almost like an airport
And
terminal.
between those
The little
two,
jewel
there's a
boxes in the
street
building
and a
are there
roundabout,
because there's a lot of
and
people
they
walking
close it
around.
off.
We don't have
and
that
they'll have a
here,
concert
but
there.
we do have the
And
opportunity
people
to
from
close
all
off that
over
street. You'll see it's
go
a brown
there.
color.
Jay's
It's
probably
brown because
played
we're
there
indicating
before.
pavers. But what happens when that street closes, and that street can totally be closed off in this whole
you park in the
design
Harris Teeter
function.
parking lot and
Right, so special
go to the
events means
festival
that that street closes,
it's a
the
great
park to the north,
idea,
the open
very
space,
current.
this creek, and the plazas to the east, and that stretch of road between the parking lot and the park all get integrated into one thing. And you can have, for example, food trucks. And vendors and users pop in there for those special events, and then when the event is gone, it becomes a street again. And that's a great idea. So we activate it that way to get exactly what you're talking about. Right here, what we were thinking is that's why the town center in our thought process was, how do we activate off into the park? We can't activate it full-time. So that's how we get, because those jewel box ideas are sitting in the median that is surrounded by
And
other
the Harris
uses. So
Teeter
that's
Shopping Center.
it's almost like an airport
And
terminal.
between those
and that
two,
jewel
there's a
boxes in the
street
building
and a
are there
roundabout,
because there's a lot of
and they
people
close
walking
it off.
We don't have
and
that
they'll have a
here,
concert
but
there.
we do have the
And
opportunity
people
to
from
close
all
off.
Yeah,
that
maybe I
street.
could
You'll see
hear
it's
from
brown
staff a
color.
little bit. So
Jay's
now that
probably
Brown
we've
because
played
we're
there
talked,
indicating
before.
pavers.
they've kind of
But
gone through
it's,
this and said,
closes,
you
and
know,
that
trying to
street
address the
totally be
concern.
closed off in
And,
this
I'm looking
whole
at,
you
you know,
park in the
design
Harris Teeter
function.
parking lot
staff
and
So special
go to the
events
festival.
means that that
recommending
street
denial,
closes.
but if it
Park
were
to
to
the
be
north,
approved, there's
Ideas
a
are
laundry
very
list
current.
creek,
of
and
items
the
listed
plazas
out here.
to the
So
east,
based on what
and
you've
that
heard and
stretch
how this has
of road
evolved,
between the
is
parking
there,
lot and the park all get
I'm just trying to wrap my
integrated
head
into one thing,
around
and you can
all
have,
of
for
these
example,
items
food
here
trucks.
and make sense of it, because ultimately we're gonna have to make a decision here. So it's just a little kind of, can you walk me through it?
So we activate it that way.
In terms of what you've heard so far, and like what maybe these items are or not addressed in your
How do we activate
report?
You can't activate it full-time, so that's how we get, because those jewel
I saw that they had the slide that kind of talked about the movement, but
surrounded by
and the Harris Teeter Shopping Center.
Yeah, so
And between those two,
I think, I mean, I think my first comment would be,
close it off.
we're seeing this for the first time today as well in the PowerPoint presentation.
So now that.
So I think there's a little bit more work to do in regard to some of the design and putting pen to paper and putting conditions on the plan to make these live and make them enforceable and make them, for perpetuity, right? I think we're still curious about the focal point in the Park-like Greenway and where the room for that is going to come into play and how that's going to operate, because we're still not at that 50-foot width from the Seam Trail Advisory Committee and their recommendation. So where that's going to come from, how is that designed, what does that look like? I think that's the main hang-up with staff right now. Because again, we're talking about the grocery store needs this, and there's limitations on what they're willing to change and not change. So the highway commercial orientation of the development, I think we're willing to give on something like that if we can really make it amenity and a linear park and hang on to the greenway through the development in this shape. So I think that's where we want to put pen to paper a little bit too, to make sure that works, and some of those pictures we showed that transpires, right, for perpetuity, right? I think we're still curious about the focal point in the Park-like Greenway.
I got a few for you.
And where the room for that is going to come into play and how that's going to operate.
The question was already asked about the timing of the
because we're still
superseding
not
of Sam
at that
Fur and
50-foot
when this
width
project would
from the Seam
come
Trail
out. So let's
Advisory
go the other
Committee
way.
and their recommendation. So where
115
that's gonna
north
come
from
how
Raymond
is
to
that designed?
McCord.
What does that look like?
Long-range plan to get
I think
that
that's the main hang-up
from 2
with-
lanes to
with staff
4.
right now.
I mean,
Because
you got
again,
any
we're
idea when
talking
that
about
would come up on the state?
the
Yep,
grocery
I see.
store needs this.
Brian's answering my
and
question with the
there's
head shake.
limitations on what
And the
they're
same
willing
thing
to
for
change and not
115
change. So
north
the
of
highway commercial
Sam Fur,
orientation of the
all the way to-
development, I
I guess
think
that
we're
would
willing
be
to
Maze
give on
Road
something
or
like
Star.
that. If we can
Same thing.
really
There's no
make it
real
amenity
plan to
and a
widen that
linear
up at
park
all,
and
right?
hang on to the greenway through the
And
development.
then, and I already know the answer to this one, so be careful.
I think that's where we want.
How
I got
far-
an at least 10 years to make sure
Yeah.
that works.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah,
the
10 years
pictures we
plus.
showed
And by the way,
that
Cat, I
transpired,
checked Cat's
right,
website
for
tonight, the
perpetuity.
timeline for the red line.
I think
It's
we're
probably
still
15
curious
years,
about
and that's
the-
their
the
estimate,
focal
so,
points
yeah,
in
stay up
Park-like
there, Brad, I
Greenway.
got a few for you.
And the room for the
Infrastructure. The question I have the answer for is, what's the distance from the entrance of this project to the rail station that is Caldwell? 115 north from Raymond to McCord.
The actual station itself?
Yeah, we're basing this on TODR, right? So
Correct.
The
The property line itself,
Answer my question with the head shake.
I want to say
And the
less
same-
than.
No, the entrance in, north of Sam Fur.
Where the station is in relation to this property?
I know where the station is. I'm
Okay.
asking that if one were want to walk to the station from this property. Yeah.
Which point of this property?
And then, and I already know the answer. to
Down
this,
here at the
so be
bottom?
careful.
Right, so it's a 10-minute walk to get up that station from down there.
Okay, yeah, 10 years plus.
It's
And
a
by the
5-minute
way,
walk.
Cat- I checked
It's
Cat's
probably
website
slightly
for the
more than a
timeline.
5-minute walk from the roundabout to the station. The rest of the site is 5 minutes or less.
Okay, I'm asking that question because they actually moved the rail station on us, right? It was at Sam Fur. The question I have the answer for is somewhere. What's the distance from the entrance of this project? Right now, from the entrance, it's a little over a mile if you got in the car and had to go up there. You probably will because nobody ran walks 10
actual
minutes.
station itself?
And, we're basing this on went out the back of the site, which,
Correct.
I bike, so I can do this easily. But
property
if you went out the
line
back of the
itself,
site, which isn't developed yet, I mean, yeah, you could probably get up there in half a mile or so, but it's not,
Where the
it's
station
not
is in
where you
relation to
couldn't.
this property?
I know where the station is. I'm asking that if I see the TIA is still due any, no updates on TIA or what it might say. And then,
Do you have an
Down here
update
at the
from
bottom?
DOT on that?
Right, so it's a 10-minute walk to get up that station from down there.
Okay, yeah, 10 years plus.
It's
And
a
by the
5-minute
way,
walk.
Kat, I'll
It's
check
probably
that.
So
slightly
the
more than
TIA,
a 5-minute walk from the roundabout.
We had to
to the state.
rescope it.
The
We
rest of the
did,
site
you
is
know,
5 minutes away.
various
Yeah, I'm asking that
iterations of
question
this
because
plan.
they actually
We did
moved
the
the rail
initial
trail.
scoping that was approved
Somewhere
on a slightly different plan. And through kind of that initial review
Right now, from the
and how the
entrance,
plan
it's
revolved, we had to
over a
rescope
mile
it.
that
So
you
all
gotta
those
car
documents has
across.
been sent to DOT, waiting for them to approve. And what that does is just establishes the framework for the full modeling
Back
and
of the site,
traffic
which isn't developed
impact
yet.
study.
I mean, yeah, you could probably get up there. Yeah, I get in half a mile or so, but it's curious because you've got, I don't know what the units, not, we're used to different numbers in here, 486, 420. But I see the TIA. You only got only one entry point exit, right? Current, everything else property does.
There's, well, in totality, there's four. We've got the Station South project to the north of us. We've got Jamesburg Drive that goes to the through the industrial park. To the east, we've got our east driveway, we'll call it. And then we've got a right-in, right-out between the gas station and the grocery store. And through kind of that initial review.
All right, and then I get why the grocery store
rescope
removed
it.
it.
So all
You
those
have to
documents
butt
have been
something up
sent,
against an ugly
to
wall
DOT,
and a bridge coming
waiting
across. The
for
best thing to
them
do,
to
the best
approve.
of these
And what that
things to
does
put up
is
there is
just
the back of the grocery
establishes the
store, so I get that. But,
framework for the full
and I've heard
modeling
comparisons to
and
Burkeville,
traffic,
which, that's a chip sale. We're not gonna be another Burkeville.
Yeah, yeah, I get
But when I looked at this, I compared it real quickly to North Creek Village, because that's with all the commercial that's on the front side, right? But, I see the TIA got only one entry point in, then the wraparound development and the actual,
There's,
the
well,
unit
in
count's pretty
total-
similar to North Creek
totality,
Village
there's
too.
four.
303
We've got the
apartments.
Station South
and
project to the north of us.
It's the
We've
one
got
that,
Jamesburg Drive that
almost
goes
in Davidson.
to the industrial, through the industrial park. To the east, we've got
The
our
public.
east driveway,
Yeah.
we'll call it.
So isn't that the better
And then we've
comparison
got,
for a
a
site?
right in, right
I mean,
out,
I love the design, it's
between
great,
the-
but
gas station and the grocery store.
I mean, I'm not familiar enough with that one, honestly, to
All right, and then
make a
I
comparison
get why
on
the
it.
grocery store. All right. You have to
I'm sorry.
butt something up. That's okay, that's right. It was approved while
Kinda.
you were out of town.
It's not dissimilar. I think, yeah, Brian worked with that project years ago.
So I get that. Yeah, just hearing you say you want to push the commercial up in there, and we're not going to be trying to Burkeville. A current example of where you can see this, so if somebody wants to put that image in their head, it would be like driving.
I mean, you're right, the grocery store is more retracted off of 73, and then you've got, out parcels along the
Yeah,
front
there
in that
is actually,
situation. So,
gas station's the first thing you get to, but it's all the commercials right there, and then we've gone in and improved something called North Creek Village, which is a wraparound for it, with 90 townhomes, 36 apartments, and then North Creek Solus or whatever was another apartment complex that went on.
the wraparound, yeah.
Another wraparound down into Black Farms Road and into that creek, so that was my comparison point for this project, so. Thanks, I just wanted to test.
I mean, I'm not familiar enough with that one, honestly, to make a comparison on it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Who else? Questions for?
Kinda, it's not dissimilar. I think, Brian worked with that project years ago. So.
Yeah, just hearing you say you want to push.
So I've been trying to keep track of staff's report and everything that's been
Current
addressed.
example
I
of where
haven't
you
heard
can see
anything
this.
about tree mitigation. And
I mean,
so
you're
don't know
right,
if we wanna
the
talk
grocery
about
store
that,
is more
or
retracted off of
if
73.
we wanna make
And then
a
you've got,
motion.
out parcels along the
Yeah,
front
there's
in that
There's
situation.
just specific
station's
items that
first
we
thing
need
you
to
get
make sure.
to, but all the commercials right there, then we've gone in and improved.
Yes, ma'am. So the tree mitigation, they're going to be required to have a
36 apartments, and then
mitigation and
North
a
Creek
request for a
Solus or whatever was
modification
another part.
to allow to mitigate over the 50%,
Another wraparound down
right?
to Black Farms
I-
Road.
We just don't know exactly what the number is, because again, some of the trees that are on the tree save plan that are called to be saved, the drip line's being disturbed, so some of them can't be counted. So we just got to update that number. So that's a little bit outstanding, but it's safe to say that mitigation would be needed, and then a modification to the ordinance requirement would be
So I've been
needed
trying to keep
to have a
track
larger
of staff's
mitigation.
report and everything that's been addressed. I haven't heard anything. But we could include that as staff comments.
That's in the staff comments, and that's on the official review for the plan that is being worked on.
There's just specific items that we
First
need
thing
to
you
make
get
sure.
to, if all the commercial's right there, then you've gone and improved.
Yes, ma'am. So the tree mitigation, they're going to be required to have a mitigation and a request for a modification to allow to mitigate
just one
over
second.
the 50%, right? We just don't know exactly what the number is, because again, some of the trees
In
that are
considering
on
the
the tree
proposed
save plan
rezoning
are called to be
application
saved.
R2516,
The
the
drip
Knox
line's being
Crossing
disturbed,
mixed
so some of them can't be
development.
counted.
The
So
planning
we've gotta
board
update
recommends
that number.
approval based on the plan
So
being
that's a little bit
consistent
outstanding,
with
but
LU 1.1.
it's safe
the use
to
of
say
future
that
land,
mitigation would be
and
needed,
LU
and then a modification to the
.2.1 higher
ordinance
density
requirement
development
would
within
be needed
2 miles of
to have a
77.
larger
It
mitigation.
is reasonable and in the public interest to approve the
we could include
rezoning
that
plan as, because it'll bring needed amenities
That's
and
in
different
the staff
uses
comments, and
with
that's
the ability to
on the
redevelop
official
once the
review
transit line
for the
is
plan
built.
that is being worked on.
In addition, all staff's notes be included
Yes, ma'am.
and
So
addressed?
the tree mitigation,
Will that cover?
they're going to be
No,
required to
Tracy?
have a mitigation and a request for a modification to allow to mitigate. There's several modifications,
So-
but I think you're also talking about the staff report recommendations. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Be negotiated, continue to be discussed prior to the town board's review R2516.
So yes,
the Knox
for both parts of that, you could make a motion that all modifications all modifications be approved, and then all staff recommendations be accommodated.
And I don't know if I want to go that far, to motion develop that within 2 miles of because I don't want to hold the applicant to all your recommendations.
But we could include that
I mean, that's why it's a tough motion to make.
That's
And
in the
somebody
staff
who's not
comments, and that's
ability to
on the
develop
official
once the
review
transit line
for the
is
plan
built.
that is being worked on.
In addition, all staff's notes be continue to work to resolve outstanding issues. Tracy, no, would that work?
To have a mitigation,
Want me to say it again?
modification to allow.
Brad, so which of the
There's several
modifications are
modifications, but I think you're also
finalized as
talking
far
about
as
the
the
staff report
request?
recommendations.
And it's a
Is
lot.
that correct?
Be
I know that you're saying that
negotiated,
there's gonna have to be
continue
a
be
more
prior to the town
defined
board's
modification request
So yes,
related to tree
so
save,
for
but is
both
that
parts
the
of
only
that, you
modification
can make a
request
motion
has
that
been
all
formalized at
modifications
this point?
recommend, all modifications be under discussion still are the swim buffers and what the mitigation is for the swim buffer, block length, the pedestrian corridor, going through in lieu of, the block length to shorten it. The building design for, the modification for drive-through and not having the buildings up on the build-to line. So, that's still, and then tree save modification, tree save mitigation, I think those are the ones that are probably, still outstanding. And then I would say the commercial mixed use, because staff still has to look at the elevations.
Want me to say it again? Okay, so with all of those items being in the motion, you agree?
You don't need to list them out separately.
Okay.
I know that you're saying that there's gonna have to be, say, what you defined as modification request
So yes,
related to tree
so
save.
for both parts of
And
that,
then as far as the
motion that,
direction,
all modifications
modifications, just direct that.
Under discussion still are the swim buffers and what the mitigation is for the swim buffer, block length, the pedestrian corridor, going
And do you
through
need me
in
to say
lieu
what you
of,
just said into the
the
microphone?
block
or can
length to
I
shorten
defer
it.
to what you just said?
You can incorporate
The
what I just said.
building
into the-
design
Perfect.
for, the modification for
So,
drive-through and not having the buildings up on the build-to line.
And then do I need to repeat the
So,
motion
that's
completely?
still, and then tree save modification.
No, so your motion
tree
was
save
essentially to
mitigation, I think those
recommend
are the ones that are
approval.
probably,
You listed
Yes.
out the
still
consistent
outstanding.
policies.
And then I'd say the
Those were
commercial
already
mixed use,
stated,
'cause staff
and
still
then
has to
you
look at
did
the
do a
elevations.
reasonableness statement as well,
My
correct?
reasonable statement,
If you
right.
didn't, then add it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then to add those that the developer continue to work with staff to address the issues of the modification.
I know that you're saying that there's gonna have to be. And all outstanding staff comments
and all outstanding staff comments.
And then as far as
Yeah.
the direction, modifications, just direct that.
Under discussion still are the swim buffers and what the mitigation is for the swim
Yes.
buffers, block length,
As well as
pedestrian
So we have a
corridor,
motion, do we have a second?
going through
Second.
in lieu of the block length, to shorten it.
Yeah, I'm voting for
building
approval.
design
It seems
for,
like every
the
issue that has
modification
been
of
brought to
drive-through
staff
and
has
not
been
having
worked
the
through
buildings up on the go-to
diligently,
line.
and so you're
So,
continuing to get
that's
us to a
still
point
an
where
entry save
we want to be.
modification.
So your
And
motion
in
was
save
looking
essentially
at the
mitigation
elevations and the
ones
drawings that I'm
probably
seeing,
listed
yes,
out
the plan that I'd like to
still
see in
outstanding.
Huntersville.
Policies.
And then I'd say the
So,
commercial mixed use, because
I'm
staff
in
still
support.
has to look at
Did
the
do a
elevations.
reasonable statement as well,
My
correct?
reasonable statement.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I think it looks like a great plan, and it seems like you're willing to work with staff, which is always good. You know, it seems like some thought's been put in, even though, you know, we have some, you know, differing opinions on maybe the grocery store location, some stuff like that. It seems like a lot of thought's been put into layout and public use, which I really like, and, you know, always like incorporation of the trail, especially one as big and as important as this. So, yeah, I like the plan, and I just hope we get a red line.
Yeah, I'm voting for approval. It
I
seems
am
like
going to vote
every
for this,
issue that has
but
been
I
brought to
also
staff
just
has been
want
worked through
put my 2 cents in and say that
to get us
the
to a
gas
point where
station
we
could be moved
want to be.
so
and
that the retail is closer to where the residents will be. By separating it out, you're doing a disservice to that retail and the community as a
Yeah, same
whole.
thing. I mean, I
If
think
you
it
move
looks like a great
that gas
plan,
station
and it
over,
seems like you're
then
willing
you've
to
got
work
the
with
retail
staff,
right there
which,
by your
is
anchor
always good.
grocery stores.
You know, it
My
seems
2
like some
cents.
thought's been put in, even though, you know, we have some, you know, differing opinions on maybe the grocery store location, some stuff like that. It seems like a
I
lot of
can't
thought's
support the
been put
motion.
into
There's too many
layout and
balls in the
public
air here.
use,
This feels
which I
like
really
we're just
like,
punting the
and,
thing.
you know, always
I'd
like
much rather
incorporation of
put a
the
substitute
trail,
motion in to
especially
defer
when
this, to give
it's
Brad a
important
chance to
us.
really
So,
do
I
his
like your
job
plan.
and go back and look
I
at the
just hope we get
modifications
a red line.
and come back to us and let us make a informed decision
I'm voting for
on
approval.
all the aspects. I mean, it is a great plan. I heard it seems like a great plan a lot. I'd like to have us all to have the
My 2 cents
assurances
in
that
and
it is
say
a great
that
plan.
the
And
gas
without
station
having
be moved
planning
so
staff's
that
buy-in,
the
I can't
retail
do
is
it.
closer to where the residents will
position.
be. By separating it out, you're doing a disservice to that retail and
Brian, were you waving your hand?
the community as
Yeah,
a
same
whole.
thing. I mean,
If you
lead to
move
that.
that
The applicant has asked that they not be delayed due to some contractual obligations, so deferral would not be their preference. I know that you asked for that potential for a substitute motion, but they would ask to just continue on through the process.
Maybe the grocery store location, some stuff like that. It seems like a
I
great
understand the
plan.
motion. There's too many
Layout,
balls in the air here. This feels like we're just punting the thing. I'd
Can
much
I
rather
ask
put a
planning
substitute
staff,
motion in to defer this, to give Brad a
seeing
chance
everything
to
as it
really
is and knowing
do
that
his
we're
job
sitting
and go
here
back and
on an
look at the
approval motion,
modifications
does that
and come back
feel
to
good
us
to
and
y'all?
let us make a informed decision.
how,
all the
It always
aspects.
feels
I mean,
good.
it is a great plan.
Approval feels good.
Seems like
I
a-
guess,
like
what
to
is
have
the strength of
us all have the
conviction of these
assurance
modifications?
that
It
is a
sounds like
great
you have a
plan.
great relationship
And
with the
without having
applicant already.
planning staff's buy-in,
Is there confidence that these can be worked through?
To where the residents
position.
will be.
So, I mean, I think there's confidence that we can work through some of them. Again, the greenway going through, and is there room? I think that's still a question in my mind, probably the biggest one, and what that's gonna look like. So, we've had discussions before, and the site plan that's come is the site plan before you. So, if I'm being honest, I think there's just some restrictions that the applicant is under based on how much room they have, based on what the tenants are asking. And I think that's really limiting them. I think they want to make some of the changes staff is making, but some they're just, they're hand tied. So I think some of the things can certainly been worked out, some may not. It always feels honestly. So I think that's the reality of where we are right now. So, I mean, but we'll be happy to work with it and see where we are as we get to the town board.
Is there
I mean,
confidence that these
that's the reality of it too. We've got an extra month.
So,
for
I mean,
us,
I think
2.5 weeks or
there's
so,
confidence that we can
to get that or try to get that worked out.
again.
the greenway going through, and is there
I
room?
mean, I support it. I think
that's still a
the
question
framework is
in my
there.
mind, probably the biggest
Yeah,
one,
there's details.
and what that's gonna look like.
Things that still
So,
happen.
we've had
changes,
discussions
modifications,
before,
but,
and the site plan that's come
I'm very
is the
hopeful
site
that
plan before
when
you.
this comes to the town
So,
board, that
if I'm
this
being
discussion
honest,
will
I think there's just some restrictions that the applicant is under,
Those major points
based on
will
how much
define
room they have, based on what the tenants are asking. And I think that's really limiting them.
I hate to
I
see
think
Lee
they
standing
want to
out
make
there
some
all
of the
by
changes
himself,
staff is
so I'm
making,
gonna
but
have
some
to
they're just
join
their hand tied.
And
So I
mainly
think some of the
because I
things
want
can
to see
certainly been
continuity
worked out,
between
some may
staff
not,
and
you know,
police
honestly.
improve
So I think that's the reality of
what is
where
the
we are right now.
conviction of these modifications?
So,
It sounds like
but
we're
we'll be happy to work with it and see
Pretty
where we are as we get to the town board.
Is there
I mean,
confidence
We've got a lot of good
that's the reality
information.
of it too.
No
We've got
denying
an extra
that.
month.
But
So
the
I
staff hadn't even
have confidence
digested
that
that.
we
Somehow
can
we've
to get that or
digested it
try to
better
hold
and
that
faster than
again.
the staff has.
The-
So
the
with that,
greenway
I'm sorry,
going
it's
through
just more of a
and is there
timing
room?
issue.
I
I
think
100% like the development, but I think from a timing standpoint, staff ought to have more of a voice to weigh in,
So
to say that we're
we've
doing
had
the right
discussions
thing
before,
before we
and
press the
the
button.
site plan
And I understand there's some
very
time
hopeful
between
that
us and
before this
the,
comes to the
you know,
So,
commissioners getting it, but nevertheless,
if I'm being
it just
honest,
doesn't
I
quite
think there's
feel
just some
like we're
restrictions
working
that the
in sync
applicant
with
is
staff.
under,
major
based on how much room they have, based on what the
I really
tenants
feel
are
on the
asking.
fence on this
And I
one.
think that's
It's
really
a very
limiting
prominent
them.
location.
I hate to
I
see
think
Lee
they
standing
want
out
to
there
make
all
some
by
changes
himself.
staff is
And
making, but some they're just their hand tied.
There's still a lot
So I
of
think some of
questions.
the
I
things
do worry that
have
the
been
steam
worked
trail
out.
is not really being embraced, I guess, with that. And
So I think that's
and
the
just the
reality
connections with
of where we are right
the
now.
retail here, the grocery store here, the retail.
but we'll
I
be
see
happy to
cars
work
everywhere.
out
The
and see
walkability,
where
actually,
we are
I
as we
don't
get
feel
to
like
town board.
walkability is on the
We've got
project.
a lot of good
And the
reality
whole
of it,
point
too,
of
no denying
TOD
that.
and
But
having a red line station is you would walk there. I know that we'd have this, hopefully you'd have the steam trail there and it would all work.
With that, I'm
I
sorry.
do feel like there's
It's
still a
just
lot
more
of
of a timing
questions.
issue.
And what I wrote down when everybody was discussing is, I don't know how we can push this forward to the board if it was just like it was. But it is today to us. It seems hard to push that
I
onto the
understand there's
board,
some time
like they have to make a
between
decision on
you know,
what we would
commissioners
give
get
them
that,
today.
but nevertheless,
That's-
it just doesn't quite feel like we're working in sync with staff.
Based on how much room they have, based on.
Go at it one more time.
I really feel on the fence on this one.
Again, I
It's
just
very
think we gotta be
prominent
careful.
location.
This is not something that's here today, gone tomorrow. I mean, this is,
There's still a
expound
lot
on
of
that. I
questions.
guess
do worry
it kind of
that the steam
degrades
trail
our
is not really being,
clout
embraced,
as
I
a
guess,
planning
with
board
that.
too, to
And,
say,
I think that's the
just the
down, or you're
connection
gonna do whatever you
with
want, and it really doesn't matter what the planning board said, barely what the staff said now, because we're pushing this thing through. So I think we need to be more careful. With that, let me take you on a railroad ride up through Huntersville. So
You would walk there. I know that
we've got our first station down at Brighton. I think they're gonna call it, what are they gonna call it? Hambright Station. There's 1,000 apartments down there already. You get to downtown, we've got 650 between Vermillion Village, Holbrook 2, and whatever else is going on. And then we've got what station that this supports already at 1,300 multifamily units. Go at it one more time. Station South, Caldwell Station, Caldwell Crossing, and I'm counting North Park Apartments because they were in the Kidman Walk too. So all that to say, this stuff's here, and most of it actually isn't here yet. We've just approved it, and we have this vision of what it's going to look like, and we've got a vision of a rail that a lot of us think is a light rail, and it's not. It's a railroad. And most of us will never step on it. I guarantee you, it's going to be 12 trips a day, and it's going to be. With that, let me take you on a railroad ride between, I guess, Raleigh and Charlotte, up and down. So we've got our first station. I think our vision of what this is going to look like is a little skewed. 1,000 apartments down. I do like the project. It looks like it's well thought out. Design of it is, but I just think we need to make sure it gets full vetting because it's not some small project. This is a major intersection of Huntersville, and it's going to be a major thing. This supports already at 1,300
The thoughts, other comments
multifamily
before we take a vote?
units. One more time. Station South, Caldwell Station, Caldwell Crossing, and I'm counting North Park Apartments because they were in the Kidman Walk too. So All that to say, this stuff's here, and most of it actually isn't here yet. We've just approved it.
Okay,
And we have
so
this vision of what it's
the
going to
motion
look like.
to
And we've got a vision of a
recommend
rail that a
approval.
lot of us think is a light rail, and it's not.
It's up
It's
for
a
vote.
rail.
So all those in favor?
Most of us have never stepped on it. I guarantee you, I think it's going to be 12 trips a day, and it's going to be, let me take you on a railroad ride between, I guess, Raleigh and Charlotte,
Okay.
up and down. So we've got, it's our first station.
That's it.
I think
Other business?
our vision of what
Other
this
business?
is going to look
Motion to
like is a
adjourn?
little skewed.
Motion to
I do
adjourn?
like the project. It looks
Second.
like it's well thought out. The
Favor?
design of it is, but I just think we need to make sure
Let's
it
adjourn.
gets full vetting because it's not some small project. This is a major intersection of Huntersville, and it's going to be a major thing. But this supports already at 13.